with an introduction and see what kind of questions that you may have. So Amy, and I didn't see who else was on that I've spoken to before, but I don't know if there's other information that I should provide ahead of time.
Ms. Gordon,
yes.
Mayor Forth.
Hi, Mayor. How are you?
Nice to see you, and thank you for coming.
My pleasure.
Commissioner Lundy, Lorraine Commissioner Lundy, when we were speaking, he said that he was going to offer $5,000 to the SID projects for each of the 4 contiguous communities in Lorraine County that would be participating. Do you know how that $5,000 might be used in this project?
I would expect in terms of costs for the setup, legal fees for us to set things up, and also some additional administrative costs, and to the extent other monies were still available, those could be used for, like I said, other administrative costs, like setup for the filing of the SID, and maybe some preliminary engineering type work, et cetera. So it would all be dedicated to the projects. But we've in some of the other cases that we're doing, each individual community that's helped form it have participated with a portion of the cost for setting it up. And it sounds like in this case with the county, perhaps they're willing to front some of the money, advance some of the money to do that. And what we would do then, whether it's advanced through the cities or through the county, when we did our first financing, we would roll those costs into the cost of the improvements, and then ultimately those monies could be refunded to the advancing party, because it is part of the cost of and it isn't a properly accessible cost. So I hadn't heard that as far as the dollar amount, so that was helpful to know. So.
Does anybody have any questions for Amanda from council?
Yes,
Barb does.
Steve, am I okay?
Yes.
Amy, how do you mentioned assessment. How do you integrate improved lakefront versus unimproved versus public versus private? I mean, you're going to have all that in this SID, I'm guessing. How would you handle those different?
Yes. Any of the shoreline erosion, the improvements upon those properties are designated specifically in the statute as public improvements. So that's a plus for us that we're able to delineate that. So I think that addresses the question a lot. The only thing we would need to watch, and this would be similar to any assessment project that we would do, there have been some questions about extensions of the erosion, so that perhaps they have a dock or they have a walkway or things like that. We would need to be careful about that so that it's not, it doesn't render it more of a private type use. But the erosion control itself that would be, permitted through ODNR, et cetera, is declared to be a public improvement for this purpose.
But what about lakefront that's already improved? I mean, if they're in this area, they've already paid for their improvements. What do you do in that situation? Yeah,
unless they had additional improvements to be financed or repairs or something like that, they wouldn't be a part of this process.
Okay. And does it also give public access to private property then?
Not for. I mean, only perhaps for the limited purpose of constructing the improvements to the extent the public entities are constructing the improvements. But as far as access to the lake or other things like that through walkways or things like that, no, it wouldn't. It wouldn't impose that kind of restriction or that kind of burden on a property. Okay. Good questions. Okay. Thank you, Barb.
You're welcome.
Any other questions from the group?
Hi, Amanda. This is Amy Hendricks.
Hi, Amy. How are you?
Good, good. Amanda and I have known each other for a long time in my previous life, maybe hers too. Anyway, quick question for you. If the city would choose to proceed, how would they go about that? And what would our role be once the district was established and people would come forward needing or wanting to do projects?
Great, excellent, thank you. And it's good to see you. So how this would proceed is that we would need to receive petitions from interested property owners, and we have a sorry, that was not supposed to happen. Oh, I've got too much technology and I stink at it to begin with, so I'm sorry for that. The process begins by petitions submitted by interested property owners to the city. We have all of the documentation necessary and the forms necessary that have been vetted by the banks, so you don't have to come up with this whole cloth by any means. So the property owners submit petitions to the cities. Councils have up to 60 days to review the petitions and take an action on whether they want to form a SID or not. I can tell you that in the Lake County situation, no one has taken the advantage of the 60 days because everybody's very eager to get this thing moving. So we've been doing somewhat like what we're doing here tonight, just informing people as we go along so that, you know, people aren't trying to catch up later. So the petition is filed. Councils pass a legislation accepting the petition to form the SID, which we also provide for you. Then the SID is formed through the filing of an Articles of Incorporation. As I mentioned, there is representation from each community on the SID board. So we will have periodic meetings of the SID board to provide for whatever we need in terms of improving or approving the various projects. And then when projects are ready to go, permitting has happened and we have costs determined, then we would go through a truncated special assessment procedure through the councils, because each of the councils have your 727 assessment authority. We would provide those proceedings for you to declare the necessity, determined to proceed, and then certify the assessments for collection. So as far as financing is concerned, what we're looking at doing is financing through notes or bonds, like I said, on a tax exempt basis, and they're strictly special revenue bonds secured only by the payment of special assessments. In the Lake County case, we have some bed tax money that has been allocated through the county specifically for shoreline erosion. So we have a chunk of change from them that in these first ones that we're doing will be utilized as a reserve fund. But when it comes time for us to negotiate the terms of the financings, the bed tax isn't required, was I guess what I'm trying to say. There are other ways to work with banks to come up with suitable terms that make it work for the communities. So these can be issued either at the county level. They could be issued through a port authority. If it's a single community SID, an individual community could, but again, we would never go against your or impact your general obligation debt limitations or anything like that. It would be solely the special assessment revenues is what the purchasers would be looking to in terms of repayment is concerned. So they'd be limited obligations that way.
And Ms. Gordon, as I recall, you need something from council, a resolution or something to cover this. Do I recall that correctly?
To cover which part, Mayor?
Or just the whole project?
Yes, there is a resolution. I can send you a form at the appropriate time that it'll show you exactly what we would need to do to approve the petition to establish the SID. Yes, sir.
So, Amy,
Barb?
Steve, is it okay?
Yeah.
Amy, so these assessments are individual assessments on what that property owner does on their property?
Yes,
Is that how it goes?
yes,
And
ma'am.
what about the relationship with the ODNR? Is that,
Yes, we're working very, very closely with them, and actually they're very excited about this whole project because in movement, because they've been struggling for a long time trying to get some things off the ground to address erosion control. So they're actually working on their processes now to streamline their processes as these projects come, so that we're able to get through and satisfy their requirements for permitting, et cetera, as efficiently as possible, so we can continue to move forward and help with the projects. Because some of these properties are in dire need of assistance as soon as possible. So we are working with them as well in terms of their permitting process.
Any other questions? Does anybody else have any questions for Amanda?
Let me look, Steve. I have two screens going tonight.
I got Frank with his hand up.
Oh, thank you, Steve. So the property owner, he first gets a contractor. Need to get that approved through the ODNR and then apply for the SID. Is that the procedure, or am I misunderstanding something?
Right. We'll get the SID established first.
Okay.
Yes, sir. And then as projects move forward, we're hoping to get to a point with particular SIDs that the SID can assist in, providing contractors and things like that. But, at least in the upfront here, with such dire need for some properties, some will be going out themselves at first to work on contractors or things like that, but into getting the permitting. So, hopefully once we get set up and actually get moving on some of these in each of your communities, the SID will be able to play an even more active role, and a resource, frankly, in terms of, who the contractors are that would be most advisable and to help with that. And then hopefully maybe even realize some economies of scale with respect to engineering and construction and things, and that they're and yet another benefit to the property owners.
Thank you.
Sure.
Homer Taft, Steve.
Okay, Homer?
Thank you. If council members and the mayor and so forth are done, Ms. Gordon, just to introduce myself, my name's Homer Taft. I'm a real estate attorney, semi-retired, and constant thorn in the side of council. But it's always been my opinion for many, many years that the SID process, if 100% of property owners were to petition contiguous to each other, could, as a joint improvement, put in shoreline structures and have them assessed, but it would require a lot of different things. This is a little different, but I do have some questions. First of all, when you say it's all of the municipalities would form a corporation together, that's certainly one way, but I'm assuming whether other municipalities did or not, Vermillion could do so on its own across the two counties and have its own SID under the statute. However, it would just not spread some of the council and bond and so forth costs as much. Is that accurate?
Yeah, the individual communities, yes, sir, could definitely do that. It's just the benefit to a larger SID is just as you said for cooperative type and cost spreading type issues. Yes.
With respect to this SID and the way that it's being managed in Lake County and elsewhere, is this strictly for private properties, and is it all a uniform design, or does each property get to decide the design of its own shoreline improvement? at least as far as erosion control is concerned?
Yeah, good questions. It can be private properties, public properties, including, city properties, metro parks, those kind of things, even churches can also apply to be a part of the SID. They just have to apply separately in writing to do so, and we actually have a few of those cases as well. And then as far as the design, et cetera, what we've really found is that properties can vary basically on what their needs are. So while we would strive to find as many uniform responses as possible, especially if properties are contiguous for a particular project, we would want to try to strive for as much of that as we could, recognizing, however, that may not be the case, because what is good for one property situated in a certain particular way may not be what another property needs. So while our efforts will be to be as uniform as possible with as few choices as possible. And it's my understanding too that the variances aren't as crazy as what I may have dreamed up. But I joke and say I'm just a lawyer. I'm not an engineer, so I don't know. But as far as cost efficiencies and contracting and things like that, we would try to be as uniform as met the needs for the erosion control.
Being a lawyer, I'll use the ridiculous example, but if two different properties, one wants, and I agree with you that it's better if things tie together, that protects all properties better. But if one property wants to design the Taj Mahal and it costs $1,000 a running foot, and another person wants to do something that for engineering and everything costs $300 a running foot, do they have the individual right to do that, and then they just pay that share? You're not spreading the 1,000 onto the 300 or so forth?
Yeah, and some of that will be up to guidelines that each individual SID board establishes as well. But your point is well taken. If property owner A wants to build the Taj Mahal and property owner B wants to, build less than the Taj Mahal, but and both respond to shoreline erosion. The costs of the Taj Mahal will be spread out over that property, not his neighbor's property that did it in a little less elaborate fashion, shall we say.
Something of this sort was done in Euclid, which may have been part of the impetus for the passage of the statute and these SIDs. And in that particular case, the city participated, but if you'll pardon me from a private property activist's point of view, it was the deal with the devil. You had to agree to public access across your land. They would build a revetment and a pathway at the base of your cliff. And that was available for public use, and it provided a continuous protection of a significant area of shoreline around Sims Park and so forth. Does this have those features or not?
No, the only way that this would have any of those features is if that's an agreement that the city and its property owners made the determination to do, but it's a different concept in that term. So yeah, we're solely focusing on the erosion control, shoreline erosion control aspect, not the expansive types improvements that city did.
Thank you. And
Sure.
I think you kind
Let
of
me
touched
interrupt
this.
here real quick, Homer.
Yeah.
We have a 5-minute, requirement, and you've
I
exceeded
have one
that.
last question, Steve.
I
think it's
understand that, and
simple.
I'll let you have the last question, but I have 11 items on the agenda tonight, and in the future, we're going to stay to the 5 minutes. Thank you.
My last question is, I think you touched on this, but if it was purely a public property, the SID could also be used for that purpose, if I understand correctly, a park or a whatever.
Correct.
To do a public property only, or it could be done in conjunction with private properties that were cooperative. Is that correct?
Yes, yep. With the idea is that the benefit of the, the tax exempt financing would be available to the public properties as well. So, and if I wasn't so long-winded, I wouldn't have taken all your 5 minutes. So sorry about
You're
that.
fine. Thank you very much.
Sure, thank you.
Is there any other questions from anybody from the audience or city council?
Let me check. Give me a minute. No other hands. Go on.
Okay, Amanda, at this time, I want to thank you for coming in and explaining the program. Any information you can get to the administration so they can get to us so we can review it in, more depth, we'd appreciate that.
Okay.
And thank you very much for coming out tonight.
Oh, very much appreciated. And I just want to wish you all a very Merry Christmas. Okay.
All right.
Thank you very much.
Amanda.
Thank you. Thank
Okay.
you.
Take care.
Okay, number 2 on the item tonight, I have my agenda is the Main Street Revitalization Project. I have Mayor Forthover.
Yes, thank you, Councilman Hollowax. Yes, that's right, the Main Street Revitalization Project. And tonight we have representatives from the Western Reserve Land Conservancy, the Vermillion Parks Board, and leading community members are on tonight to help us discuss this issue. It's no surprise to any of you that my focus is on developing businesses on the eastern end of town. 365-day a year, 24/7 businesses that'll help diversify Vermillion's tax base. But even I cannot escape the reality that Vermillion is known as a lakefront recreation town. It's known for its beautiful river and the river activities, the quaint downtown historic, and of course our beach, such as it is. This has been the identity of Vermillion for I think over a century now. When the Inland Seas Museum and the Wakefield Mansion sitting on it came up for sale, I think it was 2014, there was the talk of private entities acquiring the property and building luxury condominiums. I believe there was also a discussion about there being a waterfront restaurant with a shop complex. And there were quite a few private people salivating over that piece of property. However, my predecessor, Eileen Buellen, had the vision, along with some community leaders, to look into securing this property, securing it not just for the city, but for generations of Vermillionites to come and visitors to Vermillion. One of the most vanishing pieces of property is lakefront property. And it was Eileen and everyone else's belief that lakefront property should not just be for those who can afford it, it should be available to everyone. And since that decision was made, volunteer committees were formed, usually under the auspices of the Parks and Recreation Department, who I believe we raised $1.62 million to buy the property and to secure it for Vermillion. The committees have been at work determining what the public wants to use that property for. We've been looking into finding out what uses are similar in other communities and what best practices of lakefront development are. The Parks Board, the Western Reserve Land Conservancy, and interested members of the community are here tonight to ask for council's help in this plan and its initial project. Now you may say, why tonight? You've been at this for quite a while. The whole community's been at it for quite a while. Well, the answer is that it took a while to find out what we could and could not do on that acquired lakefront property. And we also know that this isn't a project the city can fund totally by itself. And because it finally appears that outside funding may be coming into alignment to actually make this project a reality, it's time that we prepare to go forward. So tonight, we looked for council support for the overall plan for the Main Street Revitalization Project and for help in a few infrastructure projects that will help get this project rolling. The potential future for projects down there are just as many as you can imagine. But what we're talking about tonight is just getting the project going by an approval of the overall mission and a few infrastructure projects. Right now, I'd like to turn it over to the Western Reserve Land Conservancy, the Park Board, and members of the community. Stella, are you ready?
I am. Good evening, everyone. Thanks so much for having us. We promise we will not be long-winded. We have a fairly succinct presentation to share with you that summarizes the full scope of the project, the three things that we ask City Council to consider this evening and endorse. And we have some community leaders with us, as Mayor said, to share their historical perspective regarding this project. And the community's commitment to this project has been shared over the last 10 years or so, the feedback from the community. Andy, would you mind sharing the presentation?
Sure. Can everybody see that?
Yes.
So the mayor did a great job of kind of providing that a little bit of that historical perspective and why we're in front of you today. There are a number of things that are coming together from a funding perspective. What we'll do is share with you what the full scope of the potential for this project is. Andy, if you could move forward a couple of slides. So this is what a vision for the lakefront looks like. As Mayor said, there is very little Lake Erie lakefront access that's available to the public. In fact, there's only 17%. Most of it is in private ownership and not accessible by the general public. And in Vermillion, of all places, it's critical to have as much lakefront access as possible. I want to share just real briefly, I'm the Chief Development Officer for Western Reserve Land Conservancy. For those of you who don't know who the organization is, we are a conservation organization, conservation and restoration organization. We have been specializing in land and water conservation projects for public and private use for about 30 years now. My colleague, Andy McDowell, who's with us and will manage most of the presentation this evening, is our Vice President of Western Field Operations. So he specializes in the acquisition of property and the restoration of property in the western region of our organization. We span about 20 counties, if you will, and we have a rich history of working with the city of Vermillion. So Andy, do you want to move forward with a summary of the historical perspective and our request of council this evening?
Sure, thank you. Thank you for having me.
Ask that you hold your questions until the end. We factored in some time for Q&A.
Thanks, Stella. For some of you, I was in front of council not too long ago, a few weeks ago, regarding one of the components of this project. So it's good to see familiar faces. And I think some of you remember me from years past. I've been in front of council several times over the years. To give you a quick orientation to the big picture as we go along in the slides here, you can see this will be Main Street coming down to the front with a turnaround at the end. Of course, Main Street Beach right in here. Where this is located over here, this is a house that we acquired on behalf of the city a couple years ago, and it has been demolished. So this is green space at the moment. Proposed parking lot for an area that we have under contract right now. And then over here is where the current Inland Seas Museum property, the city's property, is at the moment. So just to give you a quick orientation there. But to give you a little bit of history, and listening to the mayor talk about the history and Eileen getting things started with pieces down at the beachfront, I feel like I've been involved as long as many of you have. I started with Conservancy in 2006, which is when we started to take on what is now Wakefield Metro Park, located over here, owned by Erie Metro Parks and managed by Erie Metro Parks. So there's been a long history of partnership between the city and the Conservancy, going from the Wakefield Metro Park and acquiring these two pieces for public beach access along here, as well as the museum property, which was discussed a few minutes ago. The last one that we did, which has been completed, was the acquisition of this piece in yellow where the house was demoed and is now green space. And this piece right here is what we currently have under contract to purchase. Our goal and request to council tonight, but our goal is to acquire and conserve the lakefront property to complement what's existing on the beach site, increase the size of the beach, improve public access now and for future generations. What we're requesting of council tonight is to support the full scope of the Main Street Beach Revitalization Project, provide the funding necessary for the upgraded sanitary infrastructure for a proposed comfort and restroom station, and funding to complete the paving of the roadway from Main Street down from Huron to the beach area. And I will say that given the 20 counties that we work in a lot of lakeshore counties, and I can say there's very, very few counties and municipalities that are uniquely situated to make this happen. The budget is around $2.5 million. As you can see, the pie chart relates to all of these pieces. You can see here the one that is near term and the one that I was in front of council for most recently on behalf of getting resolutions passed for the mayor to apply for public funding was the acquisition of the Stucco home and the demolition of that to expand the beach area and to create additional parking there. That is underway. I think all of council's aware of that stage of the project as everybody was involved in the passing of those resolutions a few weeks ago for funding purposes. Next phase would be the demolition of the Inland Seas Museum and land preparation of that site, shoreline revetment, and park improvements. And you can bet I'll be looking into what was discussed in the first item on the agenda when we get to that phase. Construction of the comfort station and the walkway around it, the parking lot, the park plan, developing the plan, road work, and the sanitary upgrades. As you can see, what council would be asking and for the city is far less than a quarter of the entire overall project scope here. As many of you know who are familiar with us and the history we've had with Vermilion and other entities, we step in and provide a lot, if not all of the fundraising needed to complete a lot of these projects. Every single project that I reviewed in the history, whether it was Wakefield Metro Park, the acquisition of the Inland Seas Museum, the first Stucco home, and the next one, all of those have been a combination of public funding sources, private funding sources to make all these projects happen. Your community has been very forthcoming in trying to support these initiatives and supplementing as much as we can, of course, with public funding sources. To date, we have almost $250,000 pledged in private dollars towards these projects, and we have outstanding public grant requests totaling just over $704,000, with a couple more opportunities coming up in the spring and late winter. So in terms of where city council and city budget would be involved, it would be involving the widening of Main Street from Huron down to the beach, the installation of the turnaround at the end, upgrading the sanitary sewer to put in the comfort and restroom station that's located over here to the side, the additional parking, which will be a huge increase for ADA and handicap accessibility, improving public access to the lakefront. And this is consistent with a lot of the public survey findings that have been done since I've been in and out of being involved with Vermilion city related projects at the lakefront for almost my entire career for the Conservancy. I know that many of the public comments regarding lakefront needs has always focused on these two items here, comfort station and parking. Our timeline, early part of next year, early part of the calendar is to secure, and we've been working on it, of course, already, as most of you know, is to secure the funding for the Stucco acquisition. We anticipate wrapping that up before the end of the first quarter of the calendar next year and closing on that and demolishing that home by mid-spring of next year. Next phase would be to step into the museum demolition and have that raised before spring, before the spring season for the beach comes along. Don't want to be doing that when this beach is busy. Getting into the fall of next year, we'll begin the sanitary upgrades and the construction of the comfort station following along the footsteps of that. Obviously, you need the sanitary upgrade in order to accommodate the comfort station. Road construction, Huron Street to the beach, coming in the spring, early spring and early summer of the following year. May of 21 and to May of 22, we'll be working on the shoreline revetment and additional park infrastructure. And then as you get into the mid part of 2022 and the later part of 2022 will be more shoreline revetment and park infrastructure implementation. When we were acquiring the Inland Seas Museum property, the Wakefield Mansion property several years ago, obviously there was the thought on behalf of the Parks Board and others that the historic Wakefield Mansion, if not the entire structure, would be utilized in some way, shape, or form. Naturally, from the conservation standpoint and public accessibility standpoint, securing the property was the #1 agenda. Because without that, then you wouldn't have anything to consider after that. So we have secured the property. The Parks Board spent a considerable amount of money to have professional engineers and others look at the museum to determine what would it cost to restore this building for public accessibility and to be used in the future. That study was determined it would take anywhere from $3.1 to $4.3 million to restore the mansion and the modern addition that was added on as the museum piece. And an annual maintenance would be north of $50,000 every year to maintain it. I think that many felt that that was pretty heartbreaking to hear those numbers, but it was quickly realized that it was cost prohibitive. It could not be obtained. We have been unsuccessful in our track record of securing money for historic restoration of properties, and we've had our hands in a few. Certainly nothing to that scale of dollars, for sure. Then even if you were able to pull that off, there's numerous limitations imposed by grant restrictions that came with the acquisition of those properties. I think all of you know from being in front of resolutions for some of these public funding grants, they all come with restrictions imposed by them. The museum property in particular has those restrictions, which I'll talk about on the next slide. And what we're proposing is to provide an alternative and an amenity that is very cost effective to construct, operate, and very importantly, to maintain. So when you get into some of the restrictions that some of these grants come with, Clean Ohio, for example, Clean Ohio Conservation Fund was partially used for the acquisition of the Wakefield Mansion, the Inland Seas Museum property. And one of the components of that is any existing and future improvements on that property have to be consistent with what is called passive park use. So could you build a restroom? Yes. But could you build an office building? No. They cannot be used for residential, commercial purposes or government offices. So even if you restored it, you would not be able to just lease out the building for an accountant or a dentist office or anything like that. It would have to be consistent with the passive park use for which those funds were intended for. And any revenue or fees that are derived from a property obtained with Clean Ohio Fund, those fees and revenues have to go back into the management of that specific property. And then all the plans, whether it's this one or any of the other projects that we've done, any of the plans for improvements or upgrades would need to be submitted to us as the holders of those restrictions for our final review and approval. So you kind of got the cost prohibitive on the front end, but even if you could surpass that, how could you program this site to get around these in a cost-effective way? So the request to council is to support the scope of the Main Street Beach Area Revitalization Project, the funding for the upgraded sanitary infrastructure for the proposed comfort station, and to complete the roadway paving project on Main Street, as we discussed. Benefits, and I'm going to get to some people in the community here, and I'm going to call you out by name, but certainly the benefits of this, I think many of you will see the writing on the wall with many of these benefits, with particularly the first two. I think anybody that's been a longtime resident of Vermilion has heard these time and time and again. Restrooms and parking is a significant issue at the Main Street Beach. This will add great asset for handicap accessibility. We're looking at a grant coming up in the spring and early summer that would also help with providing additional accessibility to the area for handicapped individuals. It's a very cost-effective and long-term solution. Increased visitation to the Vermilion. With increased visitation comes increased economic benefit. There have been issues down there over the years, whether it's with the neighboring properties like the ones we're trying to acquire now, or with the museum as it sits right now with trespassing, inappropriate behavior. And overall, it's going to improve the quality of life. I mean, the conceptual design, as you can see, is it's a night and day difference in terms of what this will become in the next 2 to 3 years. So I'd like to have a little bit of testimony from folks in the audience, people who have been involved in various stages of these projects throughout. Betsy Wakefield, I'd like to call on you first if you could add a few comments to the proposed plan.
Okay, certainly, thank you. My name is Betsy Wakefield and I live at 5626 Huron Street in Vermilion. So I'd like to thank you all for letting me speak to you tonight on this issue. As many of you may know, the museum was built by my husband's grandfather, and it was his primary residence throughout his life before it became a museum. My husband and I live next door to the property. Actually, our view is the parking lot. And for the past 43 years, that building has always been the first thing I see in the morning out of my window and the last thing I see at night. The building has always been special to me because of the family history, and knowing that it may be scheduled for demolition is difficult and somewhat emotional at times. But we have to remember that the building has been closed now for over 6 years. Its condition continues to deteriorate rapidly. There's water damage throughout the building. There's mold everywhere in the building. The last time I was in it was about 3 years ago, and it was a suffocating feeling inside because of the heavy atmosphere and the mold. The building has been subject to vandalism and there's been drug activity. The Vermillion Police patrol constantly, which has helped a great deal. But no matter what steps are taken, the building is still going downhill quickly. The issue, of course, is the cost of renovation, which is huge, and the sustainability of the building down the road, which is difficult because of the restrictions for use that are on the property. So I don't honestly believe there's any other choice but to go ahead with the renovation, remove the building, and turn the focus onto the development of the property for a public use, which would serve our whole community better. So thank you.
Thank you, Betsy. Peter?
Hello, my name is Peter Corrigan. I live at 5366 Portage Drive, and I want to thank the council for allowing me to say just a few comments. First, I can't also thank enough the Western Reserve Land Conservancy for the leadership role they've taken with this project. They've been involved since the beginning, and they have allowed us to obtain these grants, provided the guidance we need with their background and experience for communities like ours. And they're the ones that have allowed the volunteers in this community to rally around the cause. And I think the big turning stone point for me, I should say, was when we finally acquired the museum. And we had a great group of people from all parts of our community. And they went out and they raised the money from small donors to large donors. It was across the scope of our community, and even from people not a member or residents of our community. And when that money came through and then the grants came through, it was like, we can get this done. We can finally see the end of the historic plan that was proposed many years ago, as the mayor pointed out, that Eileen was involved with, on how we could define our community with the waterfront and the riverfront. We have the Erie County Metro Park on the river. We've got the breakwall. Now we can get the shoreline. We can have a restroom, which was #1 on the list of what the community wanted to see. A first-class restroom designed by a good architect who's local and will serve the community all year round. We can have the pavilions that will serve guests in our community when they come to the beach and want to enjoy an afternoon on the water. Because as Stella, I think, pointed out, there's very little shoreline that's left for the public. And even the residents in our town often have a hard time finding a place to go with their families. I think the time has come for this project to go. There's no reason why we can't make it happen. We've raised the money from the community and there's more to be raised, but there's more people willing to step up and help with this project. We need to support a council. We need that sanitary sewer and we need the road. If we can get that support, this thing's a go. And I think we're going to be cutting a ribbon in a few years, and everyone in this community will be proud, and we'll be a first-class town on the shores of Lake Erie. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Peter. Brad, would you like to say a few words?
Yeah.
And is Tom on the call? Is he on this?
Yes, he is.
Okay.
Brad Schultz, 5459 Park Drive. I'm the vice chair for the Parks and Recreation Board. Terry Parker and I have been working with the Parks Board for well over 10 years on this project. And obviously both feel very passionately and are very excited about this, just because the pieces really are coming together. Throughout this, what we've used to guide ourselves is several public surveys, which Andy alluded to, really, trying to get public access, parking, and a restroom down there for our beach. And so for us, it's just amazingly exciting to actually see the pieces, starting to come together. And that's really about it.
One more, Andy, or two more, I guess, right there.
Thanks, Peter. So to recap on what the request is, Tom, would you like to speak first?
Sure. Good evening, council members. I'm not sure if you all know me or not, but I'm an architect here in the city of Vermillion. I've had my office located here for 10 plus years now. I joined the Harbor Town Committee approximately 2 years ago to lend my experience, knowledge, and talent to this important project for the city of Vermillion. As a member of the committee, I can tell you that we reviewed the existing property, its structures, and studied many options and ideas that were presented and developed during my time on the committee. We took the public survey results as a program that we needed to implement in the design. Those were the public restroom, increase the parking available to visitors on Main Street beach area, and also provide public access to the lake and to the beach areas. I believe that we have developed a conceptual plan that incorporates these requirements, and meets the restrictions that the covenant easement and that put on the property that was regarding lot coverage. I believe that with this design, we will provide many excellent areas for the public to enjoy through the beach level viewing deck, the hillside amphitheater idea, or the upper level viewing plaza. I think overall this would be a great asset to the city of Vermillion. Thank you.
Thanks, Tom. So then we move on to the next steps. I think that gives everybody a pretty good overview of what the revitalization plan is, the full scope of it, what's involved, how well we've been stepping into this and planning it out very thoroughly, in some cases for several years. I'd like to turn this back over to Mayor Forthover to go over next steps and kind of where we go from here.
Andy, can I just interrupt? That was Tom Bodie that was speaking, correct, for the record?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
All right, thank you, Andy, and thank you, everyone. Well, in summary and takeaway here, again, what is being asked of council as we're on the verge of actually, improving the image of what's become known as historic Vermillion and its beachfront by leaps and bounds. We're asking council to support the overall plan with a resolution. We're asking council to plan in 2021 to fund the sanitary work to help get the restroom and the changing room off the ground. I think we're looking at about $63,000 there in 2021. And in 2022, we're asking council to fund the road work from Huron to the beach, including the loop and the expanded parking. And some of you may remember in 2017, I think we had planned that we were putting down temporary surface on Huron Street, or on Main Street, and that we would get back to it in 2018 and resurface the whole thing from Main Street on down. Well, things happened. We had to readjust the budget in 2018, then COVID came. And I think by 2022, we should be ready to get back to it and at least do that portion that supports this project from Huron on down to the beach. And then, of course, approval to take the city property in the form of the old Wakefield Mansion, reduce that, relieve the city of the financial obligation, and move on with funding the park. So however we want to go about getting council's endorsement or further discussion on those subjects is what I think the next steps are. And I'm going to stop talking now and see if there are questions from council.
Is there any questions from any of the council members?
Steve, this is Steve Heron. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, first of all, thank you all so much. What an extremely professional presentation and very thorough. My question really is, and I think I know the answer, but when we look at that first picture of kind of the overlay, is ADA is that gonna mean all access to all of the areas for those who have disabilities? Not just the parking. I know is there gonna be some areas that a person could not, stairs or what have you?
Yeah, adjacent to the parking lot, the new proposed little parking lot, as well as at the end of the turnaround at the end of Main Street, is a wooden boardwalk area that'll be handicap accessible. And I know that the city and others down there have been using some mats to help with handicap wheelchair accessibility. But one of the grants that we are approaching will provide additional funding for much better equipment for those beach mats. But certainly it would not be, let's say, building a paved or a boardwalk all along the beach. But it would provide certainly better access, parking, drop off, as well as boardwalk and wheelchair access down to the water's edge.
Okay, and the area where my words aren't coming to me now, the amphitheater area, would that be ADA access too? So
Yes, because that'll be accessible from the top. Yeah.
I appreciate that. Thank you for that information. Thank you.
And of course, the lighthouse isn't going anywhere. Lighthouse stays.
Okay.
So just before anybody asks that question, lighthouse stays.
Any other council members have any questions? Any other residents?
Hold on a minute. I'm trying to get to everybody. Frank and Emily Scahan have questions.
Pick one of them.
Frank, go ahead, Frank.
As far as I'm concerned, this is a once in a lifetime for all of us here, opportunity to dramatically change the face of our city's beachhead. So as far as I'm concerned, as one councilman, I fully support the resolution of this project, and we must work with our finance department and find a way to provide funding for the roadway and sanitary system. I believe this is a once in a lifetime opportunity for our city. Thank you.
Emily?
Mayor Forthover, when you did your takeaway in 2021, what was it that you were hoping, what would be going on with 2021? I know you said 2022, the road work and all that.
Also, scan the sanitary work. There'll be a small lift station required, and of course, some repiping of the residences down there and a larger pipe to provide support for the new restroom. That'd be in 2021, and that's around $63,000.
And so are okay in this, would that mean that the funding starts right away for that?
Well, we'd have to, these are city engineer estimates, so we'd have to go back and coordinate with everyone else on what the planning is for starting this. But conceptually, I want to ask council to be ready to help support $63,000 when the engineers or the builders say it's time.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Gwen, do you see anybody else that has their hand up?
Brian Holmes.
Brian?
Monica was up first. Go ahead, Monica, and then I'll go after Monica.
Oh, thanks, Brian. First, again, I want to thank the group that's put all this together. You guys have done some amazing work, and we do appreciate that. I want to just comment, of course, it breaks my heart as well to see this building being taken down, historic building right on the lake. It's such a beautiful building, but with the understanding of the condition that it's in at this point, I know there's no choice in the matter. So, and I also want to say thank you for using a local architect on this project. I really think it's important that we support our local businesses right here in town when we do projects in our city. That's huge plus, and I really give you kudos for using that local business person. That's really great. I didn't hear a price for, is it 2022 for the improvement on the street? Do we have a cost estimate on what we're looking at for the improvement on the street? I got the 63,000 for the sanitary.
I believe. Go ahead. Did somebody say something? I believe the engineer's estimate was around 500,000, 550,000.
504,000 was on the presentation.
Oh, I missed that. Okay. 504 for the street for the improvement there. Okay. Okay. Thank you so much. And again, thanks for all your hard work.
Brian?
Thank you. Thank you to all that's involved. I represent the city council on the Parks Board, and this comes up every time at our meetings, and it's truly time for us to move forward. That building, yes, beautiful at one time, but now is my concern a liability, and we need to move forward. I've been involved with projects with Lorain County Metro Parks in improving lakefront property, i.e. Lakeview, and they have truly changed that around and made that a place for everything like Andy has spoke about. And this is something that we could certainly do here in the city of Vermillion. And I look forward to it. And as a council representative, I do support this project immensely. Thank you.
Okay, is there anybody else that has anything on the issue of the revitalization project?
I don't see anybody.
So at this time, will the administration be getting us a resolution that we can bring to one of our council meetings and move on with this?
We certainly can.
Okay. Anything else before I move on?
No, I thank you, council, for your attention, and I can't thank enough the Parks Board and the Western Reserve Land Conservancy.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for your time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, the last item I have on my agenda tonight would be the Woodlands entrance engineering estimates, and I have Chris Howard.
Thank you, Councilman Holloway. After our last meeting last month, based on the layout for the Liberty Woodlands intersection, we prepared a preliminary construction cost estimate. I sent everybody a copy of that. This would be replacing the entire pavement area within those limits. Obviously, this is without the benefit of soil borings. So we do have some limitations. Obviously, we're assuming there's going to be some subgrade repair, but our estimate is $170,500, and that includes a 20% construction contingency. One thing this does not include is the utility pole relocation. We're in conversations with Ohio Edison right now. Those poles are within the right of way, and we may be able to get them to pay for the relocation at their nickel. So we're having conversations with them now to see if that is an avenue, and that would be their responsibility.
Okay. Is that all you got, Chris, for us?
That is it.
Any questions for Chris on the Woodlands entrance re-engineering? And Chris, let me ask you, which did we take, the fire truck or the school bus?
This is based on the fire truck.
Fire truck, thank you.
This is based on the aerial.
Yeah. Any
Monica
questions?
had her hand up first.
Okay, Monica?
Hey, Chris, I just was wondering if in fact Ohio Edison does not take that cost on to move those poles, how many poles are there and what is the cost that you've seen in the past that you charge to relocate a pole?
There's 2 poles that would have to be relocated. And it all depends on the services on the existing poles. So they can vary from 25 to 100,000. It just depends on what's on there. Okay. But our preliminary discussions with them are very positive. And I think that it may be on them because it is within the right of way.
Great. Let's hope.
Okay. Any other questions? Barb, you got to take the mute off.
And unmute. So I guess we have to look at Amy and see where we are, right? I mean, what we've committed to for next year, and do we have $200,000 and keep the money in for the improvements on Main Street?
Any other questions? I guess one I'm going to bring in before we get to Amy is, Chris, do you consider this a safety issue? You know, so it's something, because of a safety issue, we should be moving on it anyway, because of the fact of the turn in, the turn out, people getting in, and also leaving people out in Liberty Avenue.
I believe it's a safety concern for the public. I think it's been a concern for safety services getting in there. I'm going to speak for the fire chief, but I'm sure I'm sure he would appreciate those improvements, let alone all the public that lives back there.
Because that's what I needed to ask, because I feel being a safety issue, then we need to look to the administration at this point and ask them, you know, how are we going to finance it? And you let us know, because being a safety issue, I have no problem with it. How we're going to pay for it, I guess that's your responsibility as administration to come back to us. Amy, do you have anything, or the mayor?
At this point, we're still watching how the road tax monies come in, especially the state funding portion, the fuel tax, et cetera. Those have been a little bit on the lighter side so far this year. We do also have some significant commitments for the urban paving project that's going to be coming up as well. So I'm not prepared to give you an answer this evening, but we'll definitely list that in the projects when setting those priorities.
Yeah, I think there are several projects that we're not even are talking about tonight that need to be added to that list of options to be considered of what stays in and what goes out. Because the question of Amy is, do we have the money? Well, yeah, we have it, but it's really up to council as far as which projects you want to spend it on. So she'll load those up for you, and you can decide which ones stay and which ones don't.
Anybody from council have any comments on what we're doing?
No. So Amy, can you, how far out can you go then? I mean, can you go out 2-3 years in your estimates?
I can certainly do that. And I have those preliminarily started. They've been an ongoing process for the last couple of years. Just need to rethink some of the revenue estimates now with the year we've had and where that's going to go forward.
Mm-hmm. Well, especially if we're going to add in the 500,000 for Main Street. I mean, that's a chunk of change to pull out that we didn't have before. So I think if you could go out more, 3 years, maybe even.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, thank you.
Yep, sure.
I guess my question to council would be, do we want to make a motion based on doing this project, based on if there's money to do it? I mean, what's the thought behind council? Is this an important project to push forward to?
I have Emily Scahan and Steve Herron on, want to talk. Steve Herron was first.
Well, I think it's a priority, but I think we need to just sit down and have this discussion where we have the list of projects in front of us that I think given the fact that it's a safety concern from our, city engineer, I think that it's critical, but we need to just sit down when we do these. It's not a very fun talk because we realize how little money we have and how much work we have to do, but I just think it has to go into that group of potential projects. And I'll just say right now, I'm going to consider it priority, given the number of residents that have access to that road. I know there's another access, when we go up another road, but it would sure be nice to have our emergency equipment to be able to get in quicker to the many residents there. But I think, Steve, we need to just wait till we sit down and have that discussion on our projects. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Emily?
Emily?
I was just going to say, yes, I agree that, to have the list in front of us. But also just keep in mind that for the city project, the first 2021 is only the 63,000. So I just wanted to say that.
Okay. Well, then if there's no other questions at this time, what we'll do is we'll wait for the administration to get back to us on the list of projects that they have coming up and over the next, 2, 3, 4 years. And then we can start prioritizing what we need to do. And, based on the money, we'll have to make the best decision if we can. Is that okay with everybody? If that's good, then I'm finally going to adjourn the Streets, Buildings, and Grounds for tonight.
Barb, you're on. You got to unmute.
Yeah, I just have to unmute. The Finance Committee will come to order. The first thing on the agenda is PACE financing, and that's the mayor and Amy, please. Thank you.
I'm sorry, yes, the finance director and I have been having conversations with representatives from the Lorraine County Port Authority. And Mr. Brown and Mrs. McClellan have suggested that there are some possible opportunities that Vermillion might want to be able to take advantage of. And at this point, I think it's really probably just best to let the executive director of the Lorraine Port Authority, Mr. Brown, explain some of what opportunities those are. Mr. Brown, are you out there somewhere?
Mr. Brown was not able to attend tonight, but I will be in the presentation.
All right, I'm sorry, I can't see the small squares. I'm sorry.
Not a problem at all, Mayor.
All right, see you now. Thanks, Stephanie. I appreciate it.
Sure. So Hi, everyone. My name is Tiffany McClelland, and I am with the Lorraine Port and Finance Authority, previously well known as the Lorraine Port Authority, and we oversee the Lorraine Energy Special Improvement District, which specifically handles PACE financing in a few cities throughout Lorraine County right now. So I have prepared a presentation that I'll pull up, and I'll talk through PACE financing as I go ahead and share my screen. So, all right. So what I want to talk over today is a little bit of background of what PACE financing is, so you're very familiar with what we're talking about tonight. And what you're going to realize is that this conversation is actually going to be eerily similar to the very first conversation of your evening with Amanda when she was explaining a special improvement district. And the main difference here is that this is an energy special improvement district, but it has some very similar features. So PACE financing is specifically referred to as property assessed clean energy. And this is a financing mechanism that was put in place nearly a decade ago in the state of Ohio that allows for energy special improvement projects to be financed in a very unique way. So when we're talking about energy special improvement projects, what we're talking about here are any kind of projects that enhance the energy efficiency on a building. So PACE financing specifically that we handle in the city of Lorraine and currently expanded to the Elyria Township and the city of Elyria right now. So those three communities specifically have the ability to use this PACE financing, and it's specifically focused on your commercial buildings. So think of all your businesses, your nonprofits, and your government sector. We do not handle currently residential PACE financing, which does exist and is a little bit more relatively new to the state of Ohio and is an option, but today we're really focused on that commercial aspect of PACE financing. So when we talk about applicable costs for PACE financing, what you're talking about are things that improve the energy efficiency of the building. So you go through an energy audit process, and that energy audit process can show that anything from your lights being upgraded to LED to a new roof, new HVAC equipment, if you enhance and add on geothermal or solar power to your facility, those are all costs that would show that you could have energy efficiency savings in your building. So it can be used, you can finance those improvements through PACE. Now, it's a very unique program because generally, you think a lot of times PACE financing would be used for those renovation projects. Think your downtown area or your manufacturing building that has been underutilized for years that really needs those improvements, that new roof, the new windows, the new HVAC system to get a user in. So it can be used in all of those cases, but it can also be used in new construction as well. And what that does is put you in a very unique position to offer this type of financing to attract individuals into your community while also helping your current businesses in your community. So let's talk a little bit about how PACE works here. So PACE is a special assessment on a property. So you're probably pretty familiar with what special assessments are. This has happened in many different ways, but this is specifically for energy special improvements. So generally speaking, you have the ability to join an ESID, so that's the Energy Special Improvement District. So you join or create an ESID. So today I'm speaking to you because you have the opportunity, because you are contiguous with the city of Lorraine, to join the Lorraine Energy and Special Improvement District. So what that would do is put you in a position where you don't have to go through the entire process of creating a whole entity and managing that entity yourself just to offer PACE financing. So it's very similar to that very first conversation of if you join community-wide and special improvement district, you spread those costs around and you have a little bit less overhead management of the organization while still being able to offer that program. So you create or join an ESID, and then any property owner that wants to utilize this program is going to petition the city for that special assessment. And then the city, your council, would see that and agree to levy that assessment on that property for that improvement project. And that property owner would be able to get financing through a multitude of different organizations to do their improvements on the property. And then the collection method would be established depending on who that lending source is, which we'll talk a little bit more about. So generally speaking, you have a flow chart before you. This is the process of how PACE financing works. So you have an energy audit. So if you're a business owner, you would get an energy audit on your business. You would realize that if you made improvements such as new lights and a new HVAC system, you could save energy costs. So you, as the owner, would petition to have that special assessment on your property. The city would agree because they would be joining the ESID and then would agree to levy that special assessment upon that property owner that's asking for it. And then those funds would be issued to the property so that they could make those improvements. They could put their new LED lights in, their new HVAC system. And then the unique part of this is that the assessment is actually collected via property taxes. So what that looks like is when the property owner gets their property tax bill, they'll have their property taxes, or in the government sense, you don't pay property taxes, or a nonprofit that doesn't pay property taxes would get your bill. You pay your property taxes or none that you have, and then there would be an additional special assessment levied on top of that you would be paying. So those funds would go to the county, then be distributed to the city as appropriate, and then the city would make that payment on behalf of that provider to pay down the assessment on the property. So it's a very unique process that really ends up helping out the property owner. So a couple of different places that you can look at for financing. You have private placement PACE bonds, something that we've used quite often in the city of Lorain. We've worked with NOPEC PACE program because they had a very unique target audience of $100,000 project to $1 million project. Whereas when you're talking about bonding or private placement with some PACE lenders, you're really talking about $1 million project and larger, so pretty large scale projects there. And State of Ohio also offers a PACE program where you can apply and have low interest rate PACE financing through the state of Ohio. So that was actually the very first fund that we used in the city of Lorain. If you're familiar with the Ariel on Broadway project, redevelopment project that happened in the old Broadway building, just formerly the Spitzer Hotel, that project used state of Ohio PACE financing, which is a key element in the financing of that to make the redevelopment happen. So let's talk a little bit about the benefits of PACE. Why do you want this in your community? Why do you want to offer it? And there are a multitude of reasons. So I'm going to highlight the ones here. So first of all, it's a special assessment. So what that does for your business community is it offers a way for you to have off-balance sheet financing, because the only actual liability that shows up to your business is going to be that yearly payment. So it's a real big benefit to the business community to be able to have this type of financing mechanism in place and to be able to utilize it. Generally speaking, the reason this program was originally established is because there is a fine line of a number that you can have an assessment levied on your property and then see a very similar savings on your property at the same time. So the thought process is, if I put in a new HVAC system and I apply a new roof to my building, that's a high upfront cost, but I'm also going to save $5,000 a year because I made those improvements to my building. So my energy costs end up going down annually, but I have that large upfront cost that I have to be able to finance. So that ends up putting a very a good position for the businesses where they see that savings is very similar to the payment that they end up making for that assessment. Another huge benefit is that the assessment stays with the property. So if you see any, this happens a lot in business, you have investors that come in, they purchase a building, they put money into that building, and they're just looking to get out. They want to make it so that they can get the end user in. And this gives an opportunity for those buildings to be improved and for that assessment to carry on with the building to the next owner. So you'll actually see building stock inventory get improved in your community, and then be able to have the end users be able to actually enter the building and utilize it up front compared to having to put these assessments or these improvements in later. The financing generally is very good terms. So when you're talking about PACE financing, a couple of those lenders that I mentioned, you can get financing anywhere from 2 to 6%, depending on the lending source that you're going to. And 2% money is great for a business. So on top of that, amortizing those that dollar figure over the life of the improvement is really beneficial to the business. Sometimes you can get 5-year terms, but that doesn't make it viable for the business to put the improvements in. But if you can look at the useful life of your new roof that you're going to put on and realize that now you can do all of these improvements and amortize that over 20 years, it makes it very attractive for a business to actually make those improvements. So in Lorraine County is actually a little bit late to the game when you're talking about PACE financing. You've probably heard of PACE financing over the past decade, and specifically Summit County and Toledo, Lucas County are very, very ahead of the game in the realm of utilizing PACE financing, and they have very large ESIDs created, which allows many communities to utilize PACE financing. Here in Lorraine County, the first city was Lorain, and Lorain was able to join, actually created the Lorain ESID in 2018, and the project that was utilized was the Ariel on Broadway project with the state of Ohio PACE funding. This year in September, we expanded to Elyria Township, and we actually did a sponsor project, a very small sponsor project in that community, because we were trying to help expand it to offer it to other businesses. So in the first case of Lorain, we used a project that a private developer came in with dollars and wanted to use PACE financing. In the case of the Elyria Township, we did a small $500 assessment on their township building to show as a sponsor project to the community to, 1, expand the ESID into their community, and then 2, open that door to the rest of the community to show the businesses that it now existed and they can utilize it. The city of Elyria chose the same path. They also wanted to do a small sponsorship project. So in November, the city of Elyria chose to do a small $500 assessment, once again, on their city hall building. They're going to be retrofitting new LED lighting to their building. And the idea behind that was, once again, they wanted to get the ESID expanded to their community so that they could start showing their businesses, this is here, it exists. Our city council is behind this and wants you to be able to utilize this new tool in your toolbox for financing. So let's talk about what your responsibilities and liability are, because as city council members, I think this is the most important thing for you to really know. So when you join an ESID, one of the main responsibilities is that you will have to pass legislation for every voluntary assessment. So every project that is going to come into Vermillion will need approval by you. What that means is you will know every single project because you have to approve it. So they will come before you. And this assessment can only be levied on a property owner if they ask for it. So they have to actually send a petition to city council, which you would approve. The city does have the responsibility of certifying these assessments at the county. So if a business comes to you and asks this of you, and city council says, yes, we will let you have this assessment on your property, then the city needs to certify the assessment at the county. Next, you are a pass-through entity for these funds. So what that means is at the very beginning, when I talked about that flow chart, the city of Vermillion would be responsible when the property owner pays their assessment and those dollars go to the county will send those dollars to the city, and the city has to pay the lender, which is all in that original legislation that you'll be passing right at the beginning that you'll see. So it'll lay it out very clearly who the lender is and where the dollars go. Now, something that's very important, what happens if they don't pay their property taxes? If they don't pay their bill, then now the city doesn't have the money. How do you pay the lender? Well, the answer to that is if you don't get the money, you don't pay the money because you are solely a pass-through entity. So there's no liability to the city if for some reason this assessment was levied on a property owner and the property owner chose not to pay for whatever the reason it would be. The city has absolutely no liability in that regards. And then last, the ESID board that currently exists, every city that joins the Lorain ESID does appoint 2 board members to the Lorain ESID. So it would be a responsibility of the city to find 2 individuals to appoint to the ESID. And At the appropriate time, we would go over what the responsibility of the board member and time commitment of that would be, so you would be able to appropriately appoint an individual to that. So I talked briefly about, and I'm only bringing this up because I have important notes off to the side, and we're talking about cost to the city. And generally speaking, that you can go through and join the ESID at zero cost to the city. But there's two paths you can go down. One is the path that the Lorraine went down with a private project, and the private project financing actually paid for the ESID creation. So there are attorney fees that go into this type of financing. The second way does involve a little bit of cost to the city, and it's generally just attorney fees ranging about $2,500. And that would be if you did a small sample project similar to the city of Elyria, where they decided to levy a $500 assessment on one of their buildings. And that just covers the legal costs to establish the ESID in your community. So there are two paths that you can choose to go down. And depending on which one, you could have absolutely zero cost to the city to establish and offer this program for all of your businesses, or a nominal fee to do a sample project within your community, establish the ESID, and allow PACE financing in your community. But there's no cost after that initial nominal fee. So I talked a little bit about your board of directors. This is currently the board of directors. This is a separate entity. The Lorraine Special Improvement District is a separate entity, and I'm speaking to you as the chairwoman of that. The Lorraine Port and Finance Authority is the managing entity of that organization, so we oversee all of this stuff. So our city of Elyria, as you can see, just last month, they joined the ESID, so they haven't appointed their 2 members, but they are working on deciding who those individuals would be. So you would be appointing 2 members. So with that, I'm going to stop talking and open it up to any questions and see if I can answer.
Okay, thank you very much. I guess one question I've had, who finds the loans? I mean, who goes out and gets the loans? Does the individual find the loan and then just come through the ESID?
So generally that is my job. So that we can go down 2 paths. Sometimes the businesses already have relationships with individuals that do PACE financing loans, and we can absolutely utilize that individual. But the majority of the time, businesses are coming in, they do not have a relationship with a lender. So they're asking us, here's my project, and they give me an idea of what their project scope is. And based on that, we open up the door to lenders for them. We have relationships with lenders anywhere from $100,000 projects to millions of dollars of projects. So all of those projects come to me. I vet them and get them in touch with the appropriate lending agency.
For those of you that were on council, this reminds me a little bit of the Johnson Controls thing, where they loaned us X amount of dollars and they promised us savings, energy savings to pay for them. In our case, that didn't work out real well, but I'm not saying this won't for sure. Does any council members have any questions for Tiffany?
I have a question, Tiffany. This is Amy Hendricks. When, especially a large project and for borrowing, it usually needs to be accompanied by financial statements, an official statement from the city, etc. Since this isn't going to be an obligation of the city, I'm understanding that would be the responsibility of the entity that was doing the project rather than the city to prepare those documents. Is that correct?
That is absolutely correct. So the liability for all of this financing would be on that private business. They would be responsible for putting all of the financials together, doing the energy audit. And then by the time this information would be coming before council, you would already have, the business would have already talked with the lending institution. The lending institution, many times, which is a bank, I mean, you're talking about very official organizations, a bank would have already gone through the underwriting process, vetted them, agreed that the financials are feasible, the business is feasible, they can be lended to. So you would be looking at a project that has already been before a lot of financial eyes.
Okay, thank you.
So do you have any problem with the pass-through idea and time, the time and effort that would take?
I don't think that would probably be, it would depend on how many projects we had going and how many different lenders it would be. I don't see that ever becoming a hugely sizable situation. But we would just have to wait and see how many projects we had and the variety of lenders with that. But otherwise, it shouldn't be a significant additional workload. It would be something additional.
Okay, Gwen, did you have a question?
Yeah, I just have a question for Tiffany, just to understand, all the properties would be an individual special assessment, so that would actually be the process that would fall upon me, correct?
Right, so the establishing the ESID, you need one project, and then you have the entire community, which is established as an ESID. And then from that point forward, it would be individual properties that would have that assessment. So that would entail every property that is asking for an assessment for that property to be certified at the county level.
And that's a lot of work as well, just to remind council.
Okay, and is that their cost involved to doing the assessment then? When, besides your time, in addition to your time?
Well, it might be with legal counsel. Usually legal counsel, usually our bond counsel's always been involved in the special assessment process. And then usually special assessment process has a board of equalization. It goes through a whole lot of variety of processes. It's a lot of work, just to remind you guys.
So Tiffany, is that true? Would this function the same way as a regular assessment project?
Similar to a regular assessment project, the biggest difference is that the Lorraine Energy Special Improvement District would actually be handling all of those things. So for example, we retain bond counsel, and we have our bond counsel that goes through all of the process for the special improvement district. So that's something that we pay, that gets paid out of the project fees. So our attorneys get paid out of the project fees. So that wouldn't be an extra cost necessarily on the city. Obviously, you have your own due diligence mechanisms, so you would absolutely want to make sure that you're going through those mechanisms, whatever that would be on top of. But generally speaking, the majority of your legal fees would be handled before the city would be getting involved.
And those costs would be passed on to the borrower or the business that was borrowing the money?
Exactly, that's correct.
Does anybody else on council have any questions? So,
Emily, you have to unmute yourself.
I have one. So the $500 assessment fee you're talking about, isn't that paid by the city?
Yes, if the city did choose to go down the path of establishing this with what we call our just small sample projects, then that $500 fee would be something that the city would be covering. Absolutely.
Okay, and that does cover attorney fees, you said, and things like that?
So
when you pay the $500?
Right, so the $2,500 would cover the attorney fees to completely establish it within your community. And then the $500 assessment you would pay, but then be paid right back. So it's actually a cost that basically would be deferred for a year.
Okay, so the 500 is paid back, but what about the 2,500?
The 2,500 would be a cost to the city. Correct.
All right, thank you.
Anybody else have any questions? So what do you want us to do, Mayor? I mean, what? Well, we can't hear you.
Tiffany, I believe once again, a initial resolution is required from council to support this.
Yes, so in order for you to establish the ESID within your community, first we would have to identify the project. And once we did that, which we could work, I could work with the mayor and Amy to do so. Once we identify the project, there is legislation that would come before the council, and that includes petitioning that assessment and then levying the assessment on the property. So if council so desired to establish the ESID within your community and offer PACE financing to your businesses, then we could proceed with putting together that legislation so that it could come before council.
Mayor, do you have any businesses that are going to be building that may be interested in participating in this type of financing?
Not right. Well, yeah, there are a couple who may. I can think of two that are in process right now.
So maybe we should just wait and see if we can get an interested party before we move forward.
We could do that.
Does anybody else on council have a gut? No. So I don't know what we want to do.
Well, I think, I'm sorry, Councilwoman Brady, I think Mr. Frank, Councilman
Frank.
Luca.
Am I understanding that the council doesn't pass any resolution until there's a project? Am I understanding that? So is that correct or?
Yes, you are understanding that correct.
Okay. All right. So.
But we would want to put the word out that this was available.
Right.
That we would be willing to,
Right. Yeah, I talked to many of the businesses that are in process.
City Hall, maybe inform Main Street that this was available to businesses if they were interested, and
Sure.
yourself.
I can do that. And the two companies that are in process right now, I can clue them into this thing. Sounds like the first application will be the one that really determines what our obligations are and how much of a load this is on our process.
Okay. Does that sound okay with you, Tiffany?
Absolutely. I'm just here to help and assist. I think for a long time, Lorraine County has lagged behind in being able to offer these incentives and financing tools to our businesses. And really, that's what my job here in Lorraine is to make sure that we can offer these programs. So at whatever point in time we'd like to proceed, at whatever point in time the city feels comfortable with offering this, and whatever you need from me to be able to do that, that's what I'm here to offer.
Well, thank you very much for the presentation tonight. We sure, oops, I'm sorry, Monica.
I just have two quick questions. My first question is to Amy. Amy, would we just set up like a Rotary fund? It would just be money in, money out to pay these invoices when they come in, when somebody makes a payment to us, and then we would forward it on? I think you're on mute.
You're mute, Amy.
I'm sorry. That's what I would envision. Probably each project would have a special fund so that we would be able to track each one to make sure that they were staying on target and being able to account for the ins and outs for each one of those. So that would be the establishment of the fund at the time at the inception of the project, and then the processing the receipts from the tax payments that come from the county auditor, and then twice a year usually is the debt payment cycle for those types of things. Once in June, interest only, and then December, principal and interest.
Okay. And then my second question, I think that we need to have a discussion of how much work this is going to put onto our staff before we go ahead and go along with something like this, because if we don't have the staffing to be able to do what needs to be done in a timely manner for our businesses to be able to get their loans, I think we need to look at that and consider that is a big part of our decision.
I would agree.
Absolutely. And one thing I can offer for that is if you would like to get in touch with similar individuals in, say, the city of Elyria, who's actually going through their first process and project right now, to talk with individuals in a similar position to who are in your city, so that you could truly understand the burden of time, I'd be happy to make those introductions so that you can talk to someone
Would
directly.
that be in their finance department or in their city council department?
Yeah, so your finance department would probably be the key individual that you want to speak to. And if you have someone who handles economic development, I could get you in touch with someone that handles economic development in another city as well. So
We don't have a specific economic development department. That's kind of, we're one of those small cities that Jim and I and Tony just toss things around.
Perfect.
Okay, so we'll leave it up to you guys maybe to just compare notes and get back to us if something comes up.
That would be great.
Okay?
Perfect.
Is that okay with you, Jim?
I can't unmute fast enough. Yes, that is fine with us.
Okay, thanks very much, Tiffany, and we really appreciate it.
Perfect. Thank you so much for your time tonight.
Okay, the second thing on the agenda is the 2021 temporary budget, and that's Amy.
And I remuted myself too quickly. The 2021 temporary appropriations are they actually mirror the tax budget that was adopted earlier this fall. Given that we are talking about many new projects this evening and things like that, I I would wait and see how some of those things came to move forward before finalized some of those details, but I hope to have the final version in early January.
Okay, so can I assume this appropriation budget is conservative at this point?
Yes.
Okay, does anybody have any questions for Amy? I honestly didn't have much time. I was at work. I didn't really have a chance to look over it today. Steve?
Yes, I just want to thank Amy for getting that to us. Not a fun job and not an easy job, but we appreciate that. And times are very difficult. So I guess we want to look at conservative numbers and do everything we can to go from there and hope for the best. So thank you.
Absolutely. And the appropriation modifications for the current year, I had finished those up before I left on vacation last week. But as I put in my notes, progress moves forward and sometimes unexpected things happen with all the moving parts that we have. So I did clean up the rest of those that came up over the course of the last week. In addition, one additional revenue item that was small, just under $10,000, is that both Erie and Lorraine County had, I believe, a single entity each that did not accept their CARES funding that came through the county. So the county then redistributed those monies back to all of the other participating agencies. So one county we got about $6,900 from, and the other one almost $3,000 from. So those have been put in. Actually, we had some of our line items that the bills had came in a little bit higher than anticipated for some of the items. So really, it wasn't allocated to buy anything additional. It just made so the general fund did not have to offset some of those increases.
Were these transfers that you sent us, these are the same ones we saw before, aren't they?
Yes, yes. There's an additional one for the recycling grant, which will be just in advance because of the fact that we have not yet received that payment from Lorraine County for the recycling grant. So to keep that fund from being in the negative at the end of the year, that one, once the monies come from the grant, we'll pay that one back. So that one is an additional one. There's a couple of things like that. But yes, the list is all inclusive from the start of the year, just has the additions on it.
Okay. So $1 million question, we're still in the black and going to have a little carryover for next year?
Yes.
Okay. Yes. Thanks. Anybody else got any questions or comments for Amy? Okay, finance is adjourned.
Thank you.
Thank
Good evening, everybody. Health and safety will call to order. First up is the fire chief, Chief Stempowski. Good evening. And go ahead and unmute yourself.
All right. Good evening, everybody. The fire department responded to 28 incidents in the month of November for a total of 193 through the end of November. Sunday, November 15th, the fire department was pretty busy. Actually, all city services were pretty busy. That's when those storms and high winds moved through. We had a lot of damage throughout our jurisdiction, including a lot of downed power lines. Fire department responded to 12 separate incidents, and at any given time, we were on 6 at the same time. So fantastic job by all the fire department personnel that day. And kudos to the Vermillion Police Department dispatch. I know they were extremely busy and just kept the information flowing to us. Outside of all the other 911s they had. So they did a really, really good job. The hose testing that we had scheduled for the first week of December was canceled by the testing company. Apparently all their crews were quarantined due to COVID. So they made the decision to do that. So we're working on an alternative for that testing. As has been mentioned, the fire department has applied for the AFG, the Assistance to Firefighter Grant. We're doing one ourselves. That is for the SCBA self-contained breathing apparatus and bottles. We were also asked to go in with Life Care on a communications grant. They asked us to go in with them for portable, mobile, and base radios. Prior to agreeing to that, we looked to see and verify that we would be eligible to participate in both, so we didn't boot ourselves out. and we were assured that we could. I don't have a dollar amount for the Life Care grant, communications grant, but ours is estimated at about $242,000. That would replace all of our non-compliant, or I shouldn't say that, SCBA's that really need to be replaced. We just found that our breathing air station down at Station 2 is currently out of service, and they're having a difficult time getting parts for that. They were up for the routine maintenance. We're fortunate to have another facility, or another breathing air station at the current Station 1. So we're going to limp along on that one until we find out what our options are for the breathing air station at 2. We know that that's over 40 years old, so we definitely got our money out of it, and certainly if it can be repaired, we'll do that. If not, we'll look at the options, and I'll keep you updated. I just also want to add to the discussion or report from last month regarding the Brownhelm Township CARES Act funds. They received funds, and part of those funds were distributed to fire departments that serve their jurisdiction, and we happen to be part of that. And if my numbers are correct, Vermillion received $39,820 in products, I guess. We didn't get the cash and then go buy the stuff. We actually, they solicited us to see what we wanted, and Marcia Funk did a phenomenal job. I don't know how she kept track of what I was doing, but we put a priority, obviously, on PPE. So that's your mask, gowns, gloves, coveralls. There were some other items, EMS supplies, laptops that gives us the ability to work remotely and use those for training. Those were 2 items that were considered for the CARES funds. A gear extractor, an additional gear extractor, which will be located at the new facility. Some training aids and sanitizing equipment. So we're very grateful to the trustees and the fiscal officer over there for them using those funds for that, as well as the, I guess it's a hazard pay gift that they provided to us. So just wanted to thank them and update council on what we have received from them. Just briefly on the new station, I can say, I guess it's around 95% complete. And we're just tying up loose ends, gonna be completing some final inspections. We're anticipating that we'll have an occupancy permit before the end of the year. And currently we're coordinating the movement of some of the larger appliances from the current station over to there. We're working with their site supervisors so they can have these things installed where they need to go. And my estimated time frame of moving to the new facility, I'm looking at maybe late January, early February, somewhere in there, we should have a move complete. That's based on everything that we're anticipating moving along right now in finishing up the project. That could be sooner, it could be later, but that's an estimate. And that does conclude my report.
I'd like to just point out real quickly on Chief Stempowski's report where he referenced the Life Care Grant Cooperative. That's just real quickly, that's one value added that we have definitely received from contracting our technology services with them, is they have been very proactive in including us in opportunities for grants such as that, or if there are common merchandise or first responder related technology that they purchase, that they have allowed us to buy those things at their cost, which is much less than what we could buy them at various points independently. So that has been a very successful agreement. So that concludes my comment.
Thank you, Amy. Any comments, questions for Chief Stempowski from any of the council members? I have one question regarding that grant. So the equipment, obviously radios and whatnot, what happens if we do not in the future agree to continue to have Life Care as our EMS provider? What happens to that equipment? Does it stay with us or does it go with them?
You know, that's a very good question, Councilman Holmes. I guess I will ask that question.
Okay.
I don't know that it's been submitted yet. I'm certain that they had considered that. I hadn't. So I'm glad you asked that question. I'll bring it up, bring it to their attention.
Okay. Thank you.
I don't know. I don't know if the finance director would have an opinion on that or not. I'm not sure.
Okay. Well, thank you again, and thank you to all our safety services during that storm. And I agree. It seemed like the alarm was going off every 5 seconds. So good job to you and the police department and the staff, firemen and police officers as well. So again, thank you. And again, thank you to Brownhelm Township. With that, we'll go ahead and move on to Police Chief report. Chief Hartung. Thank you, sir.
Good evening. First, with the year rolling out, I'd like to take the opportunity to commend the men and women of the agency. This has been an unprecedented year with pretty insane challenges from a public safety standpoint. Also, I commend the members of council and the administration. Governing in this time isn't certainly any easier than the public safety mission. So it's been a tremendously trying year, but we're almost to the end. With that, we've had a lot of turnover and a lot of new individuals. Sergeant Adams will be retiring on January the 4th, and then Steve Kopniski will be sworn in as a sergeant to replace him. So the focus this year has been on continuing education. The officers have been assigned a lot of online schooling that they've had to complete, and they're thankfully finishing that up. And then the focus for 21 with the relatively young mid-level management positions that we have is the focus on getting them up to speed and then continuing to see what changes the state's going to have coming down for us. Other than that, the shifts are going to be moving around, and we're looking forward to getting into 21. And go Browns. That concludes my report.
Thank you, Chief. Does anybody have any questions for the chief or any comments? Again, thank you to you and your staff. You guys do a wonderful job. Again, thank you. And yes, go Browns. Well, with that, that concludes Health and Safety Committee.
Okay, so Legislative Committee will come to order. We have 4 items on our agenda this evening. The first item is review of emergency clause in ordinances. And Steve Heron, I've got your name on that one.
Okay, thank you very much, Councilwoman Stark. Make sure I'm on. Okay, I'm talking. Okay. Yeah, I just want to make a couple comments. As everybody has noticed that's been watching council meetings, I have added some discussion and invited council on discussion when we go through ordinances, to make sure that we're doing things correctly with respect to passing things by emergency ordinance. I have reviewed and this is just my opinion. I'm not asking the administration or frankly any of my colleagues to change votes or do anything. But Revised Code Section 731.29 in the Supreme Court case of O'Laughlin versus Jones or James, decided in 2007. That was provided me by citizen Homer Taft. Basically, I look at that in terms of, the fact that council can sit down and talk about whether an ordinance should be passed by emergency, and you can have a couple of different opinions from council members as to why something should or should not be done. And the reason I think that's important is that basically, we cannot have a situation where I think there's a reading of 731.29 that kind of says, well, that the reason for something not being put in an ordinance, something going to emergency level has to be written in the ordinance. The problem with that is twofold. O'Laughlin versus James does not say that. O'Laughlin versus James is a judicial review of I think it was down in Knox County, one of the communities down there, had a situation, and they looked at a number of things, including whether or not council had actually made some discussion on the record regarding that matter. They looked at the health, safety, the public peace, health, and safety of the community, and basically said that if a city council is acting in good faith, looking at an ordinance and enacting an ordinance by emergency measure, is really not reviewable by a court. So my philosophy is, and I'm just going to bring this up when we go through things, is we need to just make sure that our community members who may be upset about an ordinance have the opportunity to come and attack it by referendum. They have that right to do that. We've got two things that we've been talking about for a number of months. One of them is the dog leash. The other one is the Airbnb issue. That has engendered a lot of discussion, which I think is very good, frankly. I think it's good that people want to talk about it and have opinions. I don't think it's wrong for us to continue to discuss those issues. But when that's passed, if it's passed, we want to do something big like that. We may not, we don't need to do it by emergency. We need to invite our community to come in and do what they think is right. And if members of the community want to attack it by referendum, they can do that. That being said, I think 99% of the things we do pass by emergency are needed. I think they're in the best interest of the community. And frankly, I just think, if we're operating in good faith and not just passing things through, that's my position, that we're doing our jobs and we're doing them properly. So I do realize there's room for disagreement on that, and I certainly understand if council members have opinions on it, but that's just what I'm going to bring up, is let's make a record on why we're doing things by emergency. That way everybody knows why we're doing it. Whether they agree with it or not is one thing, but at least they know that we're trying to keep everybody in mind and do our jobs, which is operate and enact ordinances that are for the public good, even though some of them are subject to disagreement. So that's all I wanted to say. And I talked a little bit longer than I thought I would, but I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks, President Herron. Does anybody else have any comments on that subject matter? Ken, go ahead. You're on mute right now, so you have to unmute yourself.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you now.
I totally agree with the council president's assessment of emergency clauses, and I'm familiar with the case. So I just wanted to tell you that I concur with his analysis.
Great, thank you. Mr. Taft, did you have something? I saw your hand up a second ago.
Yes, thank you, Councilwoman Stark. I have regard for my brother attorneys, Mr. Sunphauser and Mr. Herron, but respectfully, that ain't what the case says. And it's not more particularly what the statute says. And it's not what the other cases, many of which are discussed in that case, say. But the statute itself, which you are bound by because there's no change in your charter, says that the cause or reason for emergency has to be stated in writing and has to be stated in a separate section of the ordinance. It must be in writing. That's the point of trying to, and it can't just be, we think it's an emergency. It has to be relative to the subject. It has to be somewhat specific. If you don't do that, you may put the ordinance at jeopardy, or a court could otherwise disregard your wish for it to be an emergency and allow a referendum and put a hold on the ordinance anyway. So I really think I would hope the law director would take a more careful look at that, because there's a whole line of cases that say, yes, you do have to put an explicit section in the ordinance. It doesn't have to be that it's a life or death issue or a life or property issue, but there has to be a reason stated why the ordinance needs to go into effect without waiting, which is a wait of 30 days, basically. But that's the only thing it requires. But if you do not do that, I think you're putting your legislation in jeopardy. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Taft. Barb, did you have something you wanted to say as well?
Well, I guess, oh, am I unmuted? I guess I was going to ask Steve if what he was saying was we would put the emergency in all ordinances and remove it if we felt that it was not appropriate. I wanted to make sure I understood which direction we were going in. Is that what you were saying.
Go ahead, Steve.
Yeah, I think that's an option. I think there's a number of options. I think that we can put them in, you know, and then when we talk about it, when we get to that point where we talk about, you know, we've had situations where we have 3 readings and nobody comes in at the readings. And then finally at the 3rd day, there's several people who want to talk about it. We have a number of options ahead of us. We can table the ordinance. We can take the emergency language out. We can do a lot of different things. What I'm not going to do is dump on the council clerk ordinance after ordinance after ordinance after ordinance to reprint up everything when we're not going to do that. And I still not going to regurgitate what I still think about that case. I think that case does, as long as you are in good faith, as long as you are talking about it, as long as you provide that. I think the word's not reviewable by a court are set forth pretty good in Olafson versus Jones. So I think we're okay with it. Now that's just my opinion. So I want everybody to know that when we talk about you know, something by emergency, we just think about what we're doing. We are, you know, when we have a bunch of chemicals for the water department, yeah, I think it's pretty obvious we need to get those chemicals ordered. When we have grants due, that's pretty critical. We do have a number of ordinances that are controversial and important. So I think we could do exactly that part. I think we have those 2 options really: cut it out or table it, and then pass it without it being in there. Okay.
I just wanted to make sure I understood what you were saying. And I
just think we need to keep our options open and understand where we're coming from and kind of make a record on each one, why we're doing something. Thank you.
Ken, did you want to add to that?
I did. I'm not so certain that we disagree with Mr. Taft. What I've seen done in many communities without going through an elaborate language in the ordinance is when you come down to the emergency provision, it says, and the emergency is. And by way of example, Steve just used, you have to have chemicals to operate the water treatment plant or the sanitary sewer system. So you just simply say that we need the chemicals. That satisfies under that case as being an emergency. So you don't have to go through some elaborate explanation. And I've defended these cases. So I don't know about you, Mr. Taft, but I have.
Okay, Mr. Taft, I'll give you like 1 minute to speak. I see somebody else, Casey Goodson Jr. wants to speak as well. So Mr. Taft, go ahead.
Thank you. It's really quick. I agree with Mr. Sumphauser. As long as you say something in the ordinance and as long as it's related to the purpose of the ordinance as to why it's important, I think you can do it. My point was simply it has to be in there in the ordinance in a section and state something relevant to that ordinance. It can simply be that the chemicals are needed now.
Thank you, Mr. Taft. Casey, did you have something you wanted to say?
It's actually Drew Worley. I was sitting back watching this and I just think there's a miscommunication. I agree with everybody here. You know, Steve Herron's just trying to say that we just have to say what we think it's an emergency and it can't be challenged, and he's 100% correct on that. Homer's just trying to say that it has to be stated in the ordinance somewhere that it's an emergency and why. So I think everyone's just having miscommunication. I agree with everybody in this case. I don't agree with the fact that it can't be challenged as to why it's an emergency, but Steve Herron's 100% correct in how that case is. Thank you.
Thanks, Drew. Emily, go ahead. You're muted. You need to unmute.
I think we should listen to our law director we have in the past as a guideline. Also, I don't know why if you mention it during the meeting and it gets put in the minutes, it's still in writing, why that wouldn't be good enough for our meeting for purposes. I don't know. So that was just, I was just wondering if that would be enough just to mention it. And then just have it in the minutes. I don't know.
It's fine.
Okay, thanks.
Mm-hmm.
Anybody else? I think that our plan is probably just to move on how we've been doing these last couple weeks. Steve, is that you'll kind of reiterate each time is what we're doing then?
Yes, 2 things real quick. One, yeah, feel free to speak up, council members, if you think something should not be done or ask questions. Second, I want to apologize for the orangeness of my room. I just noticed it and I don't know why it's like that. So thank you.
Anybody else have any comments on that? Ken, go ahead.
I don't want to get this to be too complicated, but the language should be in your emergency clause, for the health, welfare, dog, specifically because we need chemicals in the water treatment plant. That suffices to meet the requirement. We don't have to go through some elaborate adding all the minutes from the committee meeting. We just have to specify what the emergency is, and it can be general. It doesn't have to be that we need hydrochlorine for vat number 12. It just has to be we need it for the chemical or for the water treatment plant. That's simple enough. In the body of the ordinance, that suffices. Okay?
Great, thank you. Other comments on that before we move on to our next subject? Super. So the next item on our agenda is junkyards draft legislation, and Mayor, that's got your name on it.
Thank you, Councilwoman Stark. Am I unmuted? Yep. I have before council members a copy of an ordinance that was drawn up by our law director, and it pertains to restricting junkyards in the city of Vermillion. My motivation behind this is, as you well know, I'm very adamant about developing Liberty Avenue. And of course, anyone can point out that there are areas that need improvement, but there is one eyesore at the very end of Liberty, and I don't care how you want to term it, it's a junkyard. And we do not want a repeat of that. That junkyard precedes my administration. And when I try and find out how it occurred, it appears that the reasons are because we had nothing to use to be able to say no to it. So what I propose to council now is a vehicle by which in the future, if another junkyard wishes to establish itself, the Board of Zoning Appeals would have some material with which to say, no, it should not go here. Under the law director's advice, he gave me two options. And the one that after discussion with the building inspector and the services director, one that we chose was to say that the junkyards are not legal in any of the individual zones in the city, any of the any of the zones. If someone wishes to put a junkyard where it's a prohibited use, they can go to the Board of Zoning Appeals and appeal. And there may be a very remote area of the city where it's not so bad. But if it's on Liberty Avenue, I would really encourage the Board of Zoning Appeals to deny the request. So what I put in front of you is a vehicle for them to be able to do that. And I wish council would give it some favorable consideration.
Thank you, Mayor. Does anybody have any discussion on that? We all got that in our email last week. Brian Holmes, I think I saw your hand up first.
Yes, Mayor, this is why I'm sitting where I'm at today. Again, that preceded me coming to joining council. And thank you to you and Mr. Stumphauser for creating such a legislation. Yeah, it's difficult for me to come into town every day when I come to and from work down Baumhart and onto Liberty to see that. And then I see our sign that says, "Welcome to Vermillion." It's very hard for me to continue to see that. And hopefully we're able to change that maybe in 20 years or not, or before that. But again, yes, thank you for creating this legislation to curb this type of business in our city limits. Thank you.
Thanks, Brian. Steve, did you have something, Steve Heron?
Yes, I was on council when this went through, and to be quite honest with you, we were sold a bill of goods from the company that those, when you come through, you wouldn't know it, but there were covers on the fencing, so you were not supposed to be able to see the vehicles. We were told a number of other things having to do with the cement and the oil dropping through. These were originally cars that were involved in accidents that were there temporarily while insurance companies evaluated the loss, whether or not the item was, whether or not the vehicle was totaled and to what extent the damage was. So you had cars that looked perfectly good, maybe were dented, then you had some that were in terrible condition, but that's how it happened, frankly. And, blame me, we were there and we were told this was not going to be a problem, and it just, whoever runs the company, that they just haven't followed up on it. That's just the reality of the situation. So.
Thanks, Steve. Barb?
Real quick, I'm sorry. I do agree with the ordinance. I'm sorry, Bart, the ordinance, because it gives somebody an opportunity to use their land and have an opportunity to come before BZA and ask for that. So I think a wholesale saying no to it might be unfair to landowners as a whole throughout the city. Thank you.
Thanks, Steve.
My question is, I understand it will stop people from opening junkyards, and that makes all the sense in the world, but will it also prevent storage areas from becoming junkyards? In other words, if like, I don't know, the over on 60, there's a couple where there's a lot of old boats that are just sitting there. Actually, the side yard at the VOL became that. There were boats that were just left there for years and years and years. It wasn't technically a junkyard, but it turned into a junk area. So will this ordinance also allow the city to go into areas like that and make the owners clean it up?
If I may, Councilwoman, I mean, that was the definition of junkyard was something that the law director and I had some specific discussions about. And Ken, is there something you can say about the definition of what it makes a junkyard and what doesn't?
Well, I think it's pretty well defined in the ordinance, but to answer Barb's question, I would argue that, remember, whatever we do is presumed to be within the law. So if you run into a scenario where someplace ends up being a junkyard in violation of the ordinance, I think we have the right to declare it a nuisance or take other action to try and cease and desist from the continued existence of what constitutes under the ordinance as a junkyard.
Thank you.
Okay, and one more thing, Councilwoman.
Sure, go ahead.
If I may say, and to the public, I might say, this does not affect unfortunately, our existing junkyard at the end of East Liberty. I believe they're grandfathered into this. They were there before we set up this ordinance. So it's not like we're going to be able to get rid of it by this device. There may be some other methods that we're working on to get rid of it, but this device is not capable of addressing the junkyard we have. And you can call it a reclamation yard or whatever. It's a junkyard. This won't do it.
Mayor, has anybody approached the landowner and just maybe tried to talk with them about putting up a nicer fence for the time being while they're there and that sort of thing to clean up the aesthetics of it from Liberty Avenue of what we see, you know?
Yeah, I understand what you're saying. I think the services director and the building inspector have talked to the company down there about putting the screens back up and all. It's never going to be a good solution.
Right.
But,
well, even the screens they had, you know, it was like trash bags on chain link fence. So I'm like thinking, you know, maybe a nice tall white fencing that you couldn't see through that maybe would look decent, you know. I don't know. I'm just thinking as you drive by there, it would be nice. It's there and it's going to be there at this point. So it would just be nice if maybe it could be masked a little bit to not look from the roadway as it does now. So I just didn't know if somebody went and you know, talked with the landowner and asked them kindly if they would, you know, consider doing that and to improve that end of the city.
Yeah, this I understand what you're saying, and that's a worthwhile something to look into. This is a operation that is leasing from the company that owns the land underneath it, and I think most of the old Ford plant. So we'll see how motivated they are to be civically responsible and do something.
Yeah, that would be nice.
Well, I won't go into it, but yeah, that's a good idea.
Thank you. So do we need to, are we going to make a motion? Somebody going to make a motion to put the legislation that the law director had drawn up on for our committee meeting or our council meeting in January? I see. Go ahead. Steve
Herron, I'm moving that we put that on for reading next month.
Okay, perfect. Second, Emmy? Okay, perfect. And then for discussion, as Homer, I think I just saw your hand was up again. Did I see
You
that?
did.
Okay.
Two
perfect.
very quick points, hopefully. The ordinance says junkyards, junk buildings, and junk storage. And much as I'd like that to be storage units, and we should have an ordinance on that, I'm sure you didn't mean that. But there's no definition of what a junkyard, junk building, or junk storage is. And I'm not even sure it would cover an insurance recovery operation. So you may want a definition, it's just a suggestion. But I do have also a question, and there has been discussion about what the taxes from that particular property are, and two-part thought or question. There's listed with the auditor an abatement, a very significant abatement of the taxes on that property that was apparently had to have been agreed to by the city at some time past. I'm wondering if anybody knows about that or has information on that. And at some point, that lease, whenever, is going to be up. So pressure on the property owner might, or I shouldn't say pressure, but increase to the property owner might encourage them to talk to the operator about whether they could continue to lease.
Thank you, Homer. Gwen, are you still with us here?
Yes.
Okay, sorry. Do we need to do a vote to take that?
I just have to call the roll.
Okay, perfect.
Halifax,
Yes.
Brady,
Yes.
Luca,
Yes.
Skahan, Emily,
Sorry, yes.
Holmes,
Yes.
Stark,
Yes.
Heron.
Yes.
Motion carried.
Thanks, Gwen. Brian, I see your hand.
Yeah, so if it's open for discussion, I'd like that definition to be defined a little better as far as junkyard, junk building, et cetera, if that could be addressed.
Great. Ken, do you think you would be able to work on that a little bit for us?
Absolutely, yes.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
And then
Go ahead.
one more, and if Amy, I don't know if Amy or the mayor, if you guys, the administration, could you look into that tax abatement issue as well?
Yeah, Councilman, I've asked the finance director to look into it before, and currently we're getting less than $600 a year from that property.
Okay.
Yeah, it's obviously due to an abatement. So yeah, that's something worth looking into. We'll give that a try.
Thank you.
Great, thank you. Okay, anything else on that subject matter? All right, we're going to move on to item number 3, which is shipping containers draft legislation. And Brian Holmes, I've got your name on that one.
Yes, I'd like to thank the mayor and Mr. Stumphauser on creating this legislation. As far as the definition, I know that we currently, I've got a couple things running here. We currently have some legislation regarding temporary storage containers, and the definition in that 1272.17 really boils it down to any container, enclosure, structure, portable on demand, like the pod thing, because we were having issues with that. Metal shipping container and mobile storage unit. I like that definition as well, and maybe we reconsider and maybe add that to the modular self-storage facility unit as what we're really trying to accomplish here. My intentions on creating a legislation was just not to limit, the shipping containers, but also to possibly limiting the placement of storage units themselves in our certain districts, if not some, if not all. And if I could just take a couple minutes, and again, just a couple minutes of your time when I think about this, is when I think about where we are now with what we have on our table with the current thing, is what is this landscape on the east side of town going to look like in 20 years? And obviously we discussed it right now with as you come down Baumhart, you see our beautiful sign there, and you see the junkyard behind it, and that's obviously a concern. What's defining our community? That was brought up tonight. Lakefront defines our community. We are a unique town. Our slogan says, great place to drop anchor. And my concern is 20 years from now, as you come down the east corridor of Liberty, we've already got storage facilities in place. And Carter Lumber, what a great place. If that was to ever go up for sale, if I was a businessman, I certainly would buy it. And that the buildings are already there, and bam, I've got storage. So that could eventually be another storage facility along that east corridor. Again, what are we trying to represent, or what are we trying to, folks coming into town that want to maybe start a new life here, retire here, they're going to come through this east corridor and they're going to see nothing but storage units. My concern is that's going to turn a lot of people away, and it's going to make it difficult for people who currently live here, harder to sell their property or make it a valuable property that create building or type of buildings. Currently in the B3 area, the list that are permitted uses, and I'll just run through them real quick, is an animal hospital, an antique shop, appliance store, new and used auto sales, automobile services, repair, bars, taverns, boats and marina sales, bowling alleys, car washes, cemeteries, churches, clinics, professional buildings, department stores, drive-in banks, drive-in ice cream, soda sales, drive-in restaurants, drive-in theaters, farm fruit stands, florist shop, food lockers, funeral homes, furniture stores, garden, nursery centers, and gasoline stations, or strip mall centers and malls. Those are currently the permitted uses in the B3 commercial area. Now, I know that the East Corridor is made up of the commercial and the industrial and also residential. But my concern is if we don't have some legislation created to limit the storage units or facilities along that corridor, I'm afraid we'll have to change our name or our slogan to, instead of come drop anchor, come to Vermillion and store your stuff. And what is that going to do? What are these storage units going to give back to the city 20 years from now? What are we going to be looking at 20 years from now? Like Barb says, are we going to look at these facilities that people have stopped paying their rent, and now these cars and boats and buildings are just sitting there? I don't know, but I'm concerned with, again, just the future of that corridor and how it's going to represent our city. Again, how is that going to define our community? So I would like to maybe build upon this modular self-storage facility legislation and maybe limit it into certain districts, or just limit it to only to, you can build them, but in the industrial part or industrial district only. With that, I'd like to open it up to discussion. Thank you.
Thanks, Brian. Does anybody have comments? Jim, go ahead.
Councilman Holmes, I think you and I are running on parallel courses here up to a point. I had asked the law director to help prepare legislation, actually very similar to the structure of the junkyard ordinance, that address specifically metal storage containers or shipping units. I understand what you're talking about is something different. You're talking about the structural storage containers. And I have no argument with that, just that I'm not sure this ordinance will get us there. We may have to go back after it and make some modifications. In the time that I've been working on the Eastern Corridor, there's only been one development that's come up that I've been part of that has had storage containers. I think there are some that are, and it's the one that's currently under review and being discussed. I really haven't been part of any others that were new, but can't say there wouldn't be any. And if there wanted to be legislation, if there's going to be legislation that the council would pass that had some fair restriction of them, good luck. I'd be fine with that. I'm more in favor of 24/7, 365 day a year businesses that probably work through markets that are worldwide, internet-based, similar to Defense Soap, similar to Vintage Lighting, actually, and several others that are becoming along there. I really don't see much of a future for growing that corridor in storage containers either. So if you could fairly devise some legislation, I'm okay with it. Just want to give you a heads up that that legislation that I sent forward isn't probably going to be the one to do that.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jim. I saw a couple other hands. Ken?
Yes. Speaking of definitions, after we prepared the ordinance regarding the more modular self-storage facility, we came up with additional language that has to be added. It doesn't address Brian's concerns because I was asked to prepare a specific ordinance regarding these modular units when council was faced with that issue. But because it, we find it as reused truck or trailer bodies, the problem with that is now I understand that there are modular units that are built simply to store items, and a pod is an example that should be included in the ordinance. So I have language that I will send over that would say, any other modules, excepting like a pods unit, provided, however, the pod unit can't be there for more than X number of days, which we get to the modular unit, but it doesn't address Mr. Holmes' issues, which I think are legitimate. Yeah, that's something else we'd have to add.
Thanks. Barb, I think your hand was up next.
Yeah. Well, I would agree with Brian for sure. One problem with storage units is they create no employees. They're not a permitted use in the B3 district to begin with. So we just need an ordinance that takes away the possibility of conditional use. So if we stop the BZA from issuing conditional use in the B3 area, then we pretty much eliminate storage units down the Liberty corridor, I think, as far as I know. And it's not what we want there. It's not benefiting the city in any way. It doesn't create any income tax. It's not improving the property value significantly. I really don't see any reason why we want to see them on Liberty Boulevard, period.
Okay, Brian, go ahead.
Yeah, in regards to Ken's comment, Ken, in the 1272.17, the pod unit, that definition is in that ordinance currently. So as far as definitions, which discusses the pod and the devices which are used to design for portable and transport and storage of personal items and whatnot. So under 1272.17, there's additional language that could be added to this as well, for sure.
Okay, Tony, go ahead. Steve Hollivax, I'm going to have you go ahead while he's working on getting himself unmuted. Oh,
There we go.
I'm sorry.
There we go.
Sorry about that. And what I want to do is I want to take the definition that Ken gave us and see how we can utilize it in that 1272.17 temporary storage unit ordinance, and just make one ordinance that can suffice for every, which would eliminate the shipping containers, and then, do what maybe you were talking about, Brian, in the way of, maybe limiting them to a certain district. Of course, that's all up to council, but I think Ken's definition can be part of that existing 1272.17, which is the temporary storage units already.
Thanks, Tony. Steve Hollivax, go ahead.
I believe over a year ago, we discussed the pods themselves. We did make some adjustments to that. We had some problems in Ward 3. Gwen, if you could go back and pull that and let everybody see what we did to discuss at least a year ago, because we had some issues that were long-staying pods in the development in Ward 3. And we came up with some language to help, put a time limit to it, I thought, so.
Yes.
That's the legislation that Brian's talking about.
Yep.
Great. So, Howard, how do you want to move forward with this? Do we want to put it back on for discussion next month after a couple things are researched, or do we want to, somebody want to make a motion to revise this ordinance, or?
I think we could put it on for next month's legislation and see if we can expand upon it. Or, we move forward with just the definition and the modular storage facility. And then as far as what I'd like to, as far as the actual storage units itself, create another legislation on that as well. Mayor, do you agree?
If I may, Councilman, yeah, I agree. I think we're trying to reach two different ends.
Yeah.
So I think we may need two different vehicles for getting there.
Yep. Okay.
Great. Steve Herron, I see you had your hand up.
Thank you. Yeah, I think, I was just kind of repeat that. I'd have no problem with the individual, anything that's on top of a ship, we don't need on Liberty Avenue. I mean, I think I agree 100% with that. I just want to say this. I have reservations about just telling people what to do with their property. I know we have a lot of zoning. I believe in that. We need to look at that. But when we start talking about, not storage units at all, that to me is an issue. And while I agree with many of the things people have said, what's our long-term plan? What are we doing? Property belongs to a property owner, and this is America. You are allowed to do a lot of things with your property, and we need to make sure that we're keeping everybody in mind, but that is also a factor in when we make an ordinance. But certainly storage units, individual storage units, no, that because you can't really obfuscate that on the road. You can't put long enough trees. You're just going to see those things. But other things I think you can deal with, and we need to keep an open mind to that we're also now going in. If we start talking about no storage units at all, we're starting to go into the use aspect of it, and that to me is a little bit different from banning a certain type of item on the side of the road, or on Liberty, or really anywhere in the city. Thank you.
Right. And I think that our current administration has really done well with, for a long time, Vermillion, all I've heard was Vermillion's not business friendly. And I think that we've had a lot of business development in these last so many years. And I think that we're getting a positive name finally, that businesses are looking at Vermillion again. And I think that's great. So I really would hate to see us put some legislation in that's going to stop a business from growing in Vermillion. I mean, I think Mr. Summers' plan of bringing in his business, after looking at his revised plan, I think it looks pretty good. I don't want to stop somebody from opening a business in Vermillion. It's his property, and like Steve said, he should be able to develop that property and develop as a business as he wants. And I think Vermillion, should welcome them with open arms, a new business to town, because any business, any property that he's improving and making improvements on that property is a good thing. Barb, go ahead.
Well, I'm a property rights person, so I agree with you, but within the permitted uses of that property. And in the B3 district, storage units are not a permitted use. So when you buy a piece of property in the B3, that storage units are not a permitted use there, and nor in the RS district. So I think as a purchaser of property, you think about what you're going to put on it, and you look at what is permitted, and you work within that. If you're within the parameters of that district, I totally agree with you that we have to allow the business to build or do whatever. But in this case, it's not a permitted use. So when he bought that property, storage units were not a permitted use there. So it's a different issue, I think. That's in my mind.
Frank, go ahead.
However, in 1270.13, It also says any other retail business or service establishment or use which is determined by the Board of Zoning Appeals to be of the same general character as the above permitted uses. So if that's type of plan, it would they have to go to Board of Zoning Appeals. So there is an outlet there for other uses.
Right. And Frank, you are correct. Yeah. And it is. And that's where I got the list of permitted uses. And correct, anybody in that B3 district could certainly go to BZA and say, hey, this is what I have. This is the plan. I just wanted to point out the permitted uses. And obviously, as you pointed out, they could go to the BZA and get the proper, the okay, and as long as they follow the proper channels and stuff. Again, yeah, I'm a property rights owner. I think that they have their rights. I just think that we need to be considered on what as the administration and the council, I know we're thinking of now, what kind of legacy are we going to leave as a council and as an administration on how we developed that East Corridor? What was our plan? Did we have a plan? And I just would like for us to work together and create something that benefits the city, just not now, but into the future. Let's continue to define our community and define it by welcoming businesses in and growing the East Corridor, welcoming in, rebuilding our lakefront. There's so many things that we could do as a city to help promote that and get the right growth in. And I think we need to start sitting down and looking into just not now, but the future of the city and where we want to take this business and how we want to grow that. So thank you.
Councilman Holmes, I can resend to council the corridor plan that was done at the expense of $35,000 specifically for Liberty Avenue, at least as far as the Lorain County side goes. I think we had it done in early 2018. I can send it around again, and it addresses many of these issues about what we want that corridor to be. So I can send that.
That would be great, Mayor. And then why don't we go ahead and put this issue back on our January agenda for our committee meetings. I think it's on January 11th. And if you want to fine tune that a little bit farther, and we can discuss that a little bit further length at that point.
Monica, you have Drew Worley that wants to talk.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't see that. Drew, go ahead.
What I'm hearing here is it sounds like a lot of people are for property rights, which we all know how I feel, but it sounds like you're not, because you're for them as long as you like whatever's going in there, which I have an issue with you guys limiting people as a whole. That's why both of these ordinances that you're talking about, I don't like. It sounds like there's processes in place in order to get that. Barb brings up that you can't have one in a B3, but there's a process to go through. Why not just utilize that process? Because it has to go through BZA and then you guys vote on it, correct? I'm asking, I don't know.
Yes.
Then you guys would vote on it, and then as long as that doesn't pass by emergency or anything, then there's a referendum for the people of the city to combat that if they want to. Why don't we just leave all that stuff in place? As long as I'm right, I don't know, but seems like it should work. There's checks and balances. There's a way that people can speak out against things, but to limit things as a whole for any subject, any type of business makes zero sense to me. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Drew. Anybody else before we end the segment here? Homer, I see that you have your hand raised.
Based on Mr. Worley's comment, I'll just say one thing. I'm a big property rights advocate, as I think many of you know. However, we have a zoning code, and we have a zoning code for a reason. And people have built in reliance on that zoning code. So they have anticipations of what might be around them. And that's one reason I think that if you're going to have a zoning code at all, you shouldn't be doing spot zoning. You should be doing planning, which there might be. I haven't seen the corridor plan, but But if you truly believe that any owner should be able to do whatever they want in their property, then you must be consistent and repeal the entire zoning code. If you don't want to repeal the entire zoning code and want to prohibit some things or condition some things and not others, then there is a place for zoning.
Thanks, Homer. Okay, with that, we'll discuss that further then on January 11th. With that, we're going to go to our fourth item on our agenda, which is review of ordinance 2020-58, which it says insurance. And I want to thank Mr. Pearl and Mr. Arnold. I see that you're both here with us, and I really want to thank you for your patience because this has been a long meeting to sit through. So Mayor and Amy Hendricks, I have your guys' name as a whole on that, so I don't know who's going to begin.
Sure, Councilwoman. I just want to pick up where we left off last, was December 7th, I believe. The administration fulfilled its responsibility to research and create contracts and make recommendations to council, which we did last week. Now, apparently some other matters have come before our attention, and how we want to handle those, I think, is where we begin from last week. And the finance director was out last week, but she's in now, and she may have some comments on what's transpired in her absence. Amy?
Sure. Just to touch back on the process we went through, and we do have John Dillon from NFP here with us online this evening as well, that I'll ask him to give, again, an overview of that process. But we did engage the services of NFP to review qualifications for insurance brokers for our renewal. In that was included all of the agencies that had an office in Vermillion, and also agencies that the ownership of those agencies resided in Vermillion. Now, one of those that we did research was Summers Agency, and the mayor spoke with Mr. Summers directly and determined that he was no longer involved with the agency. So we did not end up including that one in our proposals. And the evaluation that came back was the recommendation of Fitzgibbons Arnold to move forward effective January 1st for the proposal, and that was presented last week. As far as the things that have transpired since that time, I understand that Insurance Partners presented a revised proposal based on the information that was discussed at the council meeting on Monday night. And my concern with that, I put out in a memo this morning, was that I feel that at this point, then the other agencies involved should be allowed to respond as well. My greater concern is that if more favorable pricing was available, I feel that that should have been offered initially. And we went through this process to look at what is best for the resources of our community and providing coverage. The agency that was selected comes highly recommended. Also, they do have some companies that NFP feels are very friendly to municipal clients, that we may be able to have some much more competitive coverage. I want to do what's best for the taxpayers of the community and the maximization of their resources as we move forward with that selection. And I still feel wholeheartedly that the recommendation from NFP, which was very thorough and very neutral, is the recommendation I would support for Fitzgibbons Arnold.
Thank you, Mrs. Hendricks. Does anybody have comments, conversation? Steve, go ahead.
Thank you, and thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Amy. Just three things. First, we are going to have to make a decision either this week or perhaps, and this is my concern, do council members is council comfortable with the information before it to make a decision tonight? We have this ordinance up for second reading, and we can pass it by emergency like this. This has to do with the health and safety of our community, certainly. Or do we need to a week perhaps and have a special meeting next week to digest it? I know every single council member wants to do what's right for the city, and it's not our money, it's the taxpayers' money. It's our obligation to sit down and make the right decision. We have one entity has done business with the city for many, many years and has served the city in an extremely I've been on council 10 years and it's always been very forthright and straightforward. And the other company is a very good company too. We have a neutral company that has come through and I think was comprehensive in its outlook. So I kind of want to throw that out to everybody. Are you comfortable going forward with a vote? Because if you're not, I think then we need to, that's part of the debate. You know what I mean? That's part of our discussion. So those are my thoughts right now. Thank you.
Thanks, Steve. Frank?
I support NFP's initial recommendation as presented by the administration. I think they've done due diligence. And as far as I'm concerned, I'm ready to vote tonight. It's just my opinion.
Thanks, Frank.
Thank you.
Steve Hollowax?
Well, I guess my only concern is that, there was a packet that I don't think any of council got, to do your job, you need all the information. And I respect the independent party doing the research between the two companies. But, that's all I got was the scorecard and then discussion. Why wasn't the packet delivered to us? So if you want me to vote, I'll vote the way I feel because of the fact I didn't get all the information. I'm not disagreeing with how it went down. I'm just saying there's a lot of information that we need by Friday night so that we can look at it and make a fair decision why we were voted into these positions. Getting things on the Mondays, it's not fair to council members if you don't get the information on a timely manner. And that's what our rules have always been, needed to be in by Friday. So if you want to vote, I have to vote and I'll vote the way I feel. Thank you.
Thanks, Steve. Emily?
I don't feel prepared actually, especially since I've been out and I've had to try and catch up with all the correspondence this weekend that I had, and not having the packet, I don't feel ready to vote.
Thanks, Emily. Mayor?
Yeah, I'm confused. I mailed a scan of the entire packet to all the council members Friday afternoon.
I didn't get that in my email, Mayor. I don't know if anybody else received that in theirs.
And I didn't receive any requests for any additional information beyond what was submitted at last Monday's meeting until roughly noon today.
Okay.
Okay, Brian, I see your hand was up a couple minutes ago.
Yeah, I've been in the government business for a while, and I know that things like this is just not like, oh my God, this just popped up. I understand why we're dealing with this now, why we didn't deal with it maybe 3-4 months ago. So maybe in the future we should move on this a little sooner, and instead of waiting till the end of the year, that way when we get to this position, we're not trying to, hurry something through or not having all the information. So again, I would say in the future, I would like for us to maybe be a little more prepared on taking something like this, which is very important, yes, because of the taxpayers' money and for the health and safety of our employees. Familiar with both agencies. I've had experience with Fitzgibbon and Arnold, and they do a wonderful job, as Mr. Pearl does as well for the city. But yeah, I think maybe just a little more time to digest this would help. But if other council members want to move forward, we can certainly move forward with it tonight. But I think again, I have no problem meeting next Monday. I have no problem with that. I can certainly arrange my schedule if need be. But I just would hope that the administration would maybe tackle this a little sooner so we're not in this position that we currently are at now. So thank you.
All right. You know what? Excuse me, but I'm looking at the email that was sent to all council members. The entire packet, 12/11/22 is at 12:20 p.m. and it has the attachment. It's to every one of you. And it has the attachment of the packet that was brought in by Insurance Partners.
I'm actually on my computer right now, so I can't go back and look when I'm on the Zoom, but
what's the date?
Search for it, but
It was at 12/11/2020 at 12:20 p.m.
Go ahead.
First of all, it was information that was not solicited, and when it arrived, we didn't have resources to go around delivering it to everybody. We had 3 people in City Hall, so this packet was emailed to everyone.
Okay, so just
sorry. I'm going to call on Steve Holloway first. I saw his hand was up.
Now, one is, I did not see it in my emails. Could be that the attachment was big enough that it would not go through. I don't know. I'm not an IT guy. 2 is, if the packets, you didn't have the personnel, you could have had the personnel to take it to our mail place where you guys have the key and you could have put it back in there and we would have came and got it because
I don't have a key. I don't have a key to the mail place.
Well, Bill's the one that fixes the door every time it breaks over there for our mail. So I think between Gwen and him, he could have got a passcode to get in. I'm not arguing why we didn't get it. I'm not arguing why. I just have a packet that I never got, and it's hard for me to make a decision, Mayor. I'm sorry.
I would like to explain, because I feel like I'm just kind of sitting back here listening to this whole process, and I kind of wanted the honesty to be out there. I was on vacation Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, and at one point I said I cannot be reached. This was 3 days I could not be reached. I was contacted by the building department, by the building inspector on Thursday. He told me packets arrived, big packets arrived. He set it in front of my mailbox. And I said, I don't know what I can do about it. I am on vacation. I can't deliver packets. I can't even pick them up. And he said, well, I can deliver them for you. He offered. I did not ask. And I said, are you working Friday? And he says, yes, I am. I just need their addresses. So I said, I thanked him for that offer of courtesy. On Friday, I got another phone call from him saying, the mayor went ahead and scanned them. Do I still need to send them? Well, my response was, council doesn't always get their mail because of their working hours. And I said, but a lot of times they can't print all that material. And if you're saying it's a big packet, they're not going to be able to print it. They're going to need that packet in front of them to be able to look at it. So yeah, they probably should have it. He told me he would deliver them. I come in this morning and I was told by the mayor in an email that they were not delivered because they didn't have the staff. I felt like I couldn't have a courtesy of somebody helping me when I was on vacation. That's all I'm going to say.
I think a lot of this boils down to, this was a totally unsolicited amended process or amended proposal that none of us were even aware was coming in. So we really had already presented the results to council. The fact that this came in and we're being chastised for not distributing it, I think I think the second proposal, in my opinion, was a little bit too late.
And
if the offer could have been made, the offer should have been made in the first proposal.
And the proposal was delivered Friday. The hard copy packets, again, which as Amy said, were unsolicited. Listen, I've got 3 people, including someone who's complaining that nobody answers the phone in the building department. I'm not going to send the guy out all afternoon running down packets as a delivery boy when we've got inspections that need to be made. We need to have meeting minutes of meeting discussions about these legislations that were to be proposed. This was the better use of his time, and I got the information to you through an attachment. I'm sorry if you didn't get it.
Okay, so I'm going to interject here. I really think that we probably need to get back on the matter of the insurance bids.
Right.
The matter is, there's 2 bids there. We didn't get all the information. Steve Heron, I see you waving your hand. Go ahead.
Yes, and it, this is a situation where we're all, working from home. We're all, we need to take time off for whatever reason. I'm going to have to take time off from work this week, just finding out things I found out today. So we're all under stress, and it's very difficult. I thought I got it, Mayor, but I'm looking through my mail now and I can't find it. So this may be my fault, my phone. Here's my thing. I have a quick question. Did insurance partners submit a bid or submit information during that process? And I think the answer is yes, but I just want to be sure.
You're breaking up a little bit.
Oh, okay. How am I coming through now?
Okay, right now, good.
Okay, did insurance partners submit an original request, original information during the original process when NFP was evaluating everything?
Yes.
Whether they should have or
They
shouldn't.
were scored on the score sheet.
Okay, and that's what I thought. Okay, so, and then they submitted an unsolicited amended numbers. Presumably, one could look at it and say to compete with the Fitzgibbons-Arnold group. Is that kind of what you're looking at, Amy? Is that how you're seeing the situation?
Yes,
They submitted new information on a Friday, last minute, outside of kind of the scope of the administration's acceptance window of that.
Correct.
Okay. All right. So now then, beyond all of that, our votes, our decision is going to be what's best for the city. So, as Frank kind of looked at it, he's satisfied with, the neutral company NFP's, suggestion. I am too, but I don't want anybody to, I don't want anybody to think that I think we should rush to a decision if you're not comfortable. And that's what, do we need another week to just sit down and look at those 2 items and then come back? Or because we have to make this decision, and we're not coming back after Christmas because that's our 5th Monday, I think, but or can we make the decision tonight? I don't want anybody to think they have to make a decision they're not ready to do. So,
well, and if it's a matter of, is this just about, if it's just about price, Fitzgibbons-Arnold has indicated that they will match that price. And I will give the floor to Matt if he would like to talk about that at this time. I think that we really need to look at the fact that a process was engaged, a legitimate process, and a recommendation was made by the administration in good faith. The fact that this other bid came in at the end, at the 11th hour, I think that is outside the process and not in the scope of where we need to be looking at this point. The administration made a recommendation and engaged services from an expert in the insurance industry, which I am not. I don't think the mayor is. I'm not sure any of the council members are. I'm not sure why the administration's recommendation isn't being At this point, it's like, well, why did we even go through that process?
I'm going to say something, and then Frank, I see you have your hand up. Can you tell me, does the, I guess what I was hoping to see that I didn't get to see, and I don't know if you have that or don't have that, or you can just tell me that, are we looking at, between the two companies, are we looking at the same deductibles? Are we looking at the same, insuring the city for the exact same amount? Are we looking for cyber coverage with one and not with the other? Are we looking at apples to apples? Are we looking at apples to oranges? You know, on that paper that we got from the company that you had look at it, it gave like how their office staff is and that kind of stuff.
Sure.
I don't know what kind of coverage we're looking at. Are we looking at the exact same coverage? I know that last week we were told it was going to be with the same company. This is just who we're going through to get the insurance with the company. Was it Travelers that we use?
Right, and that's kind of our worst case scenario at this point. I think that effectively marketing that coverage, possibly with some other firms that Fitzgibbons Arnold has access to. I guess at this point, I'm wondering if we have backed ourselves into another situation similar to what we had with BAC, because it's been over 10 years since any other agency even quoted this. I, for example, contacted the city of Huron recently, and they paid their renewal rate for their insurances for 2021 is less than $74,000. I'm not saying that ours will drop that significantly, but I can't understand what we would have that would be different, that different, even if we got a new quote that was double what Huron is paying. So I think that we need to review our plan and have it marketed with maybe some more competitive carriers that specialize with municipalities. And that's what Fitzgibbons Arnold can do beyond that Travelers quote, once we sign that letter of agency of record letter that will allow them to complete that process.
Okay, but the coverage is exactly the same. You're looking at the same dollar amount of coverage for the exact same coverage. There's not something that we're going to drop because we're going with the different group. There's not something.
No.
The different quotes are giving us different coverage, and that's why there's such a difference in them.
Nope.
Okay, Frank, go ahead.
I just let me make just a general comment. I think when the city entity, when they go out they solicit bids, they get bids, they're formally reviewed, especially in this case by an independent third party. I really think it sets a bad precedent for the city of Vermillion to say, well, no, come back later and come back with something else. I mean, it just doesn't seem like that's the right way to do business. When you go out for bids, people submit their best bid and then let the chips fall where they may.
Yeah, but I've been doing this for 35 years. I've never seen an after bid like this.
Anyway, I mean, somebody could bid on the street and they're $5,000 higher, and they go, oh, wait a minute, no, we'll meet that. Let us give us the business. It just doesn't seem like a proper way to do business. That's all. Thank you.
Okay, so and I'm just going to make one more comment that I just, I know we've been with insurance partners for years and years and years, and I appreciate that we do business with insurance partners. Once again, because they are in town, and does Fitzgibbons Arnold, do they have an office in town?
I guess if you could consider that two of their owners live in town, they're definitely accessible, but you can ask Matt about that.
There might be other insurance people that live in town too, but I wish we could find somebody and be able to go with somebody who, we like to support our local businesses. And I understand that we, have people that live in town, and I'm not trying to say against against Fitzgibbons Arnold at whatsoever. I'm just trying to make a point that, you know, we like to try to support our local businesses in everything that we do. And it breaks my heart that we're going to go, you know, with a company that's not in town, although I do 100% understand that we need to do what's best for our taxpayer and spend the taxpayer dollars in the best way possible for our city as well, and do what's right for the city in that way. So does anybody else have any other comments? Do we want to did somebody want to make a thought that you want to review things a little further for next week? Do we want to go ahead and vote on this tonight? Steve, did you?
Monica, you were going to let Matt Arnold respond to the ownership of the company?
Oh,
Yeah.
If he'd like to, he's welcome to.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I guess I just appreciate what you guys are saying overall. It's not a decision that comes easy. If you've had a relationship or had certain people you've worked with for a long time. We don't have an office in Vermillion. Our offices are in Westlake physically. I grew up in Vermillion. My mom and dad still live there. Clark Fitzgibbons still lives there. Those guys started our firm, and they've been, I think, pretty good community members for a long time. So I don't really need to speak on that. I guess when you look at the broker you're using, whether it's us or insurance partners or whomever, you have to go with the broker, or you should be going with someone that can give you some different options and opportunities. And I think that's what we bring to the table. Now, I don't have those options and opportunities in front of me today because of the way this bid process was set up to find a broker that fit what the city was working for. That's how this was presented to me. I put together a 6 or 7 page report, RFP, that was kind of unique and kind of different. And it asked for, you know, carriers we had, it asked for how we do things in our firm, it asked for what kind of team would be assigned to it. There's a lot of good information in there, because of all the different brokers that are out there, you got to make sure you're going to someone that can get you some different options. I don't know if you've been with Travelers forever. I don't know all the history, but when I looked, I didn't know what the premium was either when we looked at this. And we mentioned doing it on a fee basis because it's a municipality. We have a lot of nonprofits and some other munis that we insure, and we're always sensitive to the cost of those individuals. So that was a suggestion we made in our RFP because that's how we do things. And then it sounds like maybe they've come back, insurance partners has come back and said, yeah, we can do that too. Well, the reason we put that in our RFP was because it's unique. There are other things I think that we bring to the table too, but I don't want to sit here and try to oversell our firm and make a big pitch for it. But I'm here to answer questions. I mean, I'm a pretty honest guy, and I'll answer any questions you have. If we put this off till next week, then we're at the 21st. There's a 10-day, our industry has all kinds of goofy rules, and there's a 10-day deal that it has to be done before 10 days, and we've got to make a full submission to Travelers. We've got some backroom work to do on this. It's going to take a lot of time. And if it waits till next Monday, it may be just too late. We may not be able to do something this year, and that would be unfortunate. So.
Thanks, Matt. John, go ahead.
Thank you, Councilwoman Stark. This is somewhat out of my scope, but it's solid advice to the city. I think you need to make a decision, and the reason is what Mr. Arnold just said is absolutely correct. And if indeed there's a transition, you want a smooth transition, and we're running up against the clock. So however the vote comes out, and that's obviously your all's call, both agents deserve this running 2 weeks to do the best they can do for the city. So I think delaying it, and I appreciate, Steve, you wanted to look at additional information. I get that, but we are running up against the clock, and you're putting everybody in a tough spot professionally on this side of the world to get this done. So it's a little out of my scope, but I think that's very solid information, Mayor and President Herron. I think you got to make a call.
Steve Herron, go ahead.
Thank you. Yeah, just me personally, the information that I wanted and was wanted to bring up is why we put this on committee has been answered. And I am satisfied with making a vote tonight, kind of with Frank on that. And, I think it is important. I did not know about that 10-day period. And no, I'm not an expert on anything related to insurance, other than I used to sue insurance companies, but I don't do that anymore. So, but the fact of the matter is, it has been a very difficult discussion on a number of levels, because I think I don't see that there's anybody attacking credibility or character of anybody, be it an insurance company or the administration or a council member or anybody that works for the city. This is just kind of a different spot for us. Been working with the company for many years, and we are now hit with kind of a tough decision, but for reasons beyond anybody's control, we didn't have what we thought we might need the information to sit and look at. But from my own perspective, and I don't want to keep repeating myself, I am comfortable going ahead and vote tonight. I think we probably should do that. So we've got this ordinance coming up. If it fails, well, then we'll have to come back and figure something out probably in a week, I would say. But that's where I am. And it's coming up for second reading and our special meeting in a little bit. So thank you.
Great. Anybody else? Steve Hollivax, go ahead.
I have no problem voting on this tonight. And for John and Matt, it's more of anything of a council member getting the information on a timely manner. This is not here to punish you or the evaluation. We do evaluations on a regular basis for engineering firms. And if Chris Howard was here and if there was something out of his realm, they would do the same thing. They would get someone to do an evaluation. I have no problem with that. All I'm a little upset about, I didn't get any information to even look at. You were selected, Matt, and I don't have a problem with that. I'll vote tonight, but my issue is something different than what we're voting against for tonight, your firm. So thank you.
Thank you, Councilman.
Great. Okay, well, we're going to go ahead and end this. I'm just going to say two quick things. In the future, it would be really great, like Brian Holmes had mentioned, if we can get things maybe a couple of weeks sooner, so we're not at the last, the 10th hour here trying to get something done, would be greatly appreciated. And also, we do have some great storefronts in Vermillion, Mr. Arnold. If you'd like to bring your business here, it is a great place for a business. And with that, I'm going.
We spend a lot of time in that town, so.
I'm going to close legislative, and we're going to close legislative for this evening. Thank you so much, everybody, for the great conversation.
Okay.
Thanks, Matt.
In 3 hours and 11 minutes, we need a quick break before we go into our city council meeting.
Let's get it over with.
Okay, very well. So we'll begin the special Vermillion City Council meeting tonight. Bid you all welcome for the Monday special Vermillion City Council meeting for December 14th, 2020. We'll begin by standing with the Pledge of Allegiance in a moment of reflection or silent prayer. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of
America,
to the republic
for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty, justice for all.
Glenn, can you call the roll?
Halifax,
Present.
Brady,
Present.
Luca,
Here.
Gahan,
Here.
Holmes,
Here.
Stark,
Here.
Aaron.
Here. Do we have any correspondence, Ms. Fisher?
I have none this evening. We need to approve the minutes.
Sorry about that. Do we have a motion to approve the minutes of the December 7th, 2020 council meeting?
So moved.
Second.
Question?
Holmes,
Yes.
Luca,
Yes.
Brady,
Yes.
Halifax,
Yes.
Stark,
Yes.
Gahan,
Yes.
Holmes,
Yes.
motion carried.
We do not have correspondence.
No, I have no correspondence.
Okay. We'll go to President Council's report. This evening, I have no report. We will go to new business. You have before you a number of names for our boards and commissions, and also the administration supplied us with the information on the individuals. I guess I would open it up. First, I like to do these individually, but in the interest of time, I don't know that we need to do that, but I just want to thank all of the individuals for responding and saying they're willing to serve. They're all, it's much appreciated. So I guess I will open up to any discussion about any of the appointments. Does any council member have an objection or any discussion about them? Any issues? Okay, so I'm going to make a motion to approve the mayor's reappointments to the Vermillion boards and commissions for terms beginning January 1st, 2021, with all the boards and commissions and the names given by the administration that are set forth in the agenda tonight. That's my motion.
Second.
Any discussion? Okay.
Hollivax,
Yes.
Grady,
Yes.
Luca,
Yes.
Gahan,
Yes.
Holmes,
Yes.
Stark,
Yes.
Heron,
Yes.
motion carried.
Thank you. Okay, we'll go to the reading of the ordinances resolutions. The first two are tabled. So if you could begin, Mr. Stumphauser, with ordinance 2020-58.
Thank you, Mr. Council President. This second reading of ordinance number 2020-58, an ordinance authorizing the mayor and the finance director to execute necessary and proper contract documents to provide casualty, liability, property damage, motor vehicle, vehicular, police and fireman liability, errors and omissions, public official liability, umbrella coverage, and other customary comprehensive insurance coverages as set forth in bid specifications promulgated by the city of Vermillion in order to protect the city of Vermillion, Ohio, its property, its personnel, and persons within the corporate limits for a period of time commencing January 1st, 2021 through December 31st, 2021, and authorizing and awarding of all such insurance coverage based upon public competitive bids into various insurance companies as set forth herein through Fitzgibbons Arnold and Company, which this council determines to be the lowest and the best received, authorizing the finance director to return any and all bid specifications by unsuccessful bidders, authorizing the finance director to make payment of premiums for all such coverages as set forth herein and declaring an emergency.
Thank you. Do we have a motion to suspend the rules with respect to ordinance 2020-58 and declaring an emergency?
So moved.
Second.
Hollivax,
Yes.
Grady,
Yes.
Luca,
Yes.
Gahan,
I would just like to say that I think staying with a company we had that's local would be my vote. So I would say no.
Holmes,
Yes.
Stark,
No.
Heron,
Yes.
motion carried.
That was just to,
That was just to suspend the rule.
yeah. So do we have a motion to adopt ordinance 2020-58 and declaring an emergency?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, just real quick, I believe that this, I'm going to vote for this motion. As far as the declaration of emergency, we need to have this done by the end of the year, and pursuant to the discussion that was given about the 10-day professional issues that insurance companies have to deal with, I don't think even waiting a week to discuss it is prudent or good for the communities or for our city. So that's my thought. Any other discussion regarding this matter? Okay.
Gahan,
No.
Holmes,
Yes.
Stark,
No.
Hollivax,
Yes.
Brady,
Yes.
Luca,
Yes.
Heron.
Yes.
Motion carried.
Okay, proceed.
First reading of ordinance number 2020-59, an ordinance authorizing the mayor to enter an agreement by and between the Erie County Auditor's Office and the City of Vermillion, Ohio for services rendered and declaring an emergency.
And my apologies. I will ask our finance director, does this need to be done tonight? I know you submitted all the information with the attachment, but it didn't look like to me, but I could be wrong.
Yes, all of the information was, let me pull that right back up here just a moment. The one for the county auditor, the 2020-59, that was had been sent previously. I didn't send that today. That was sent a week or so ago.
I prepared that a couple weeks ago.
Okay, so it looks like January 1, 2021 is the first day of that agreement.
Yes, and I just received that agreement just probably 2 weeks ago was when that came from the Erie County Auditor. The good news on the context of the agreement is that the Erie County Auditor's Office had charged a 2% admin fee for the first 2 years that they had collected the bed tax. And for the amended agreement and renewal for starting January 1, they are eliminating the 2% administrative fee. The rest of it changes, but what that means is we'll get the full gross amount of the fees of the taxes collected. So that's good news.
Okay, so if we get to that point, after we make motions, just be available for questions.
Yeah.
But it sounds like it needs to be done tonight. Okay, so let's start off just with the initial aspect of it. And that is, I'm sorry. Okay, yeah. Do we have a motion to suspend the rules with respect to ordinance 2029-59 and declaring emergency?
So moved.
I'll second. Okay, Glenn.
Brady,
Yes.
Hollivax,
Yes.
Skahan,
Yes.
Luca,
Yes.
Holmes,
Yes.
Stark,
Yes.
Heron.
Yes.
Motion carried.
Okay, so do we have a motion to adopt ordinance 2020-59 and declaring an emergency?
So moved.
Second.
And I would invite any further questions for the administration about this. Sounds like we're getting a little break on it. Okay. Everybody good? Okay. Glenn?
Stark,
Yes.
Holmes,
Yes.
Skahan,
Yes.
Luca,
Yes.
Brady,
Yes.
Hollivax,
Yes.
Heron.
Yes.
Motion carried.
Okay, proceed.
First reading of ordinance number 2020-60, an ordinance to make temporary appropriations for current expenses and other expenditures for the city of Vermillion, Ohio, state of Ohio, during the 3-month period beginning January 1st, 2021 and ending March 31st, 2021, and declaring an emergency.
First off, do we have a motion to suspend the rules with respect to ordinance 2020-60 and declaring an emergency?
So moved.
Second.
Stark,
Yes.
Holmes,
Yes.
Skahan,
Yes.
Luca,
Yes.
Brady,
Yes.
Hollivax,
Yes.
Heron.
Yes.
Motion carried.
We have a motion to adopt ordinance 2020-60 and declaring an emergency.
So moved.
Second.
Any further discussion or questions from the administration on this? We discussed it quite a bit. Okay. Yeah, I believe this is a situation that because January 1 is, we need to have our budget going, and it's in the best interest of the health and safety of the city. So that's anybody else? Gwen?
Should it be 2021?
It is. We changed it. I just didn't change it in the caption, but I already
Okay, I'm
advised
sorry.
them.
I'm sorry, I missed it. I just.
He read it to be 2021. We didn't get the ordinance till today, but it's 2021.
Sorry.
Stark,
Yes.
Holmes, Brian,
Sorry, yes.
Luca,
Yes.
Gahan,
Yes.
Brady,
Yes.
Hollivax,
Yes.
Aaron.
Yes,
Motion carried.
proceed.
First reading of ordinance number 2020-61, an ordinance amending ordinance number 2020-5 adopted March 2nd, 2020 to make appropriations for current expenses and other expenditures for the city of Vermillion, Ohio for the fiscal year ending December 31st, 2020 and declaring an emergency.
You know what, Ed, Hendricks, does this need to be done? Do we have a deadline that we have to get this in? I don't think we do, but
No, we need it.
we do.
Yeah, it's her final, her amending her appropriations to the end of the year.
Okay, well then, do we have a motion to suspend the rules with respect to ordinance 2020-61 and declaring emergency?
So moved.
I'll second.
Sorry.
Brady,
Yes.
Luca,
Yes.
Gahan,
Yes.
Holmes,
Yes.
Stark,
Yes.
Hollivax,
Yes.
Aaron.
Yes.
Motion carried.
We have a motion to adopt ordinance 2020-61 and declaring emergency.
So
So
moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Thank you.
Brady,
Yes.
Luca,
Yes.
Gahan,
Yes.
Holmes,
Yes.
Stark,
Yes.
Hollivax,
Yes.
Aaron.
Yes.
Motion carried.
Thank you. Thank you all very much. Couple of things. Our next council meeting will be Monday, January 4th, 6:00 p.m. via Zoom. At this point, all January meetings that we have will be on Zoom. We are tentatively scheduled for Zoom in February, hoping the numbers get better. I would love to go back to in-person meetings, but just being realistic, we are where we are. So, but I will say that definitely we will be on Zoom all through January, probably February. We all hope for the betterment of everybody. I ask everybody to have a very good Christmas, happy Hanukkah, and
Steve,
yes.
Before you close the meeting,
Sure.
can I ask, make a motion for executive session to talk about contract negotiations? It'll be a short one.
All right, we can do that. Okay, is that your motion?
Yes.
All right. I'll second that.
For Hollivax,
Yes.
Brady,
Yes.
Luca,
Yes.
Gahan,
Yes.
Holmes,
Yes.
Stark,
Yes.
Aaron.
Yes.
Motion carried. Barb, who do you want in the meeting, and everybody else will have to leave?
Tony and Chris and the mayor and Amy, I guess everybody except Matt and Jerry.
Do you want the law director?
See, Matt.
No, I don't think you need to be here. You know, do you think, Mayor?
No,
No, we don't need the law
I
director.
don't even think Amy needs to be on.
Okay, all right, that's fine. You can
Thank
leave.
you.
Right.
I
You
wish
can buy-
everybody a very
you can
good
buy
holiday.
coffee tomorrow.
And be safe, be kind, wear masks, social distance, love each other.
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas. Happy New Year.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, so we're out, right? If our name wasn't mentioned, we're out.
Oh, no.
Oh.
Council has to stay.
Okay.
Jerry's still on.
Barb,
Yes?
you're on live YouTube. We can't do this.
Uh-oh. So what do we, okay.
If I may, I think.
Hold on, Mayor, Jerry's still on. Mr. Pearl's still on.
It
Well, I
doesn't
don't know.
matter. We're live on YouTube, but we can't do
Okay.
a.
Okay.
But if I may, I think the subject matter that the councilwoman wants to talk about, it's not going to go anywhere before January 4th.
Okay, I just didn't want us to get into the situation like we did with the insurance thing, that it was a last minute, where council wasn't involved in the process.
But there hasn't even been a second meeting on this one yet.
Okay, well, like I said, is just so council is involved in the process, getting to the end point, so we know what's going on.
All right. I think everybody, we're all
That's
trying.
all I ask. That's all I'm
All
asking.
right, Merry Christmas, Happy New Year.
Yeah, Merry Christmas. All right, take care.
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
Merry
Glad
Christmas.
you're back with us.
Have a good Christmas.
I'm
Welcome back.
glad I lasted this long.
Yeah, I'm glad you're back.
How are you feeling?
Good. My back's killing me from sitting here, but no, good. I mean, I'm trying to get around, do a lot of stuff so that, work my lungs, do all that. So
I'm glad you made it through.
yeah.
Yep, we all are.
Yeah. Nice to see you guys. Have a good Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
Sure.
Yeah, Merry Christmas.
How does this work?
Dude. Cracking me up, man.